Hello, I'm back for another probably a little short stream. I'm pretty wiped out. It's been a long day, but I wanted to get some thoughts down about emotion. This was arose from an earlier conversation that we were having on stream and then in the chat afterwards, and I had to cut it short. So I wanted to at least get that part of it finished up. Um, I've been having an interesting conversation with the AI about emotion. I'll share some of that. But another thing I want to share. Actually, hang on. I think I have some tweets first. Let's get those out the way. Um, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Let me show you this video. I don't think it's a parody. I think this is a real person. Oh, hang on. Let me get to my other tweets first. Yeah, this is from the Rogan Trump interview. It's a quote from Joe Rogan. He says young people are sick of mentally ill woke activists trying to control their lives. I have more examples of this woke activism that's been coming across my feed, but I think I'm going to save that for tomorrow because they're pretty lengthy and pretty crazy. Joe says the rebels are Republicans now. You want to buck the system? You're a conservative now. The liberals are now pro silence and criticism. They are pro censorship. They talk about regulating free speech. It's bananas to watch. I agree. I think the new counterculture is on the right. And as a lifelong member of the counterculture, I'm not surprised that that is where I now find myself. Um, okay, let's see another one. Oh, this is a study that was done. It's a longitudinal study. They follow people over time. Um, and it says neuroticism, the big five trait of neuroticism, has a negative impact on relationship satisfaction, and conscientiousness has a positive impact. Uh, and that's your own neuroticism or your own conscientiousness. The traits of your partner, they say, meanwhile, have a negligible effect on satisfaction. I dispute that just intuitively because I can't be with an overly neurotic partner. So if they're high in neuroticism, that is going to negatively impact the relationship for me. It's not only going to just be my trait. But anyway, I wanted to share that tweet. All right, let's get to this cute little Halloween video. Hey, Peace and Daniel Barry, Jeff Sama, Hero, Jeff Sama. Are you making fun of Japanese people? Is that racist? What is Jeff Sama? What's a Sama? Is it, I don't know what that is. It seems a reference to something that I'm probably not getting. Jeff Sama. It might be a millennial thing, like we don't watch the same shows. I don't know. Japanese. Okay. Because I was thinking like Jeff San. I know I associate that with Japanese, but maybe okay. Hero Jeff Sama. Coming all in my chat being racist. You need to check your whiteness. We saw a lot of that. Oh, never mind. Okay, I'll shut up now. A title of high praise. I won't ruin it. All right. Um. Oh, this video. This is this is how to do Halloween now, I guess, if you're woke. Let's see what this lovely creature has to say.
My birthday's on Halloween, and I'm also incredibly woke, which makes me uniquely equipped to tell you how to Halloween respectfully. Number one,
I
don't do
apologize for the
blackface. Number
cringe.
two, don't try to look like another race or ethnicity. Whether you're dressing as a person or character, don't change your skin tone or facial
This
features.
is
This
not the
includes
future.
darkening your skin, using
Not the
prosthetic
future.
facial
Not gonna be
features,
my
or
future.
manipulating your eye or nose shape. You can learn more about colorism and featureism from Dr. Sarah L. Webb at Colorism Healing. Number three, avoid cultural appropriation. This one's easy. If the outfit is a representation of a culture that you're not a part of, avoid it, especially if it's just a racist interpretation of another culture. This includes dressing as a stereotype, religious symbols, or traditional regalia.
Don't tell me how to
Remember,
dress.
culture is not a costume. Number four, don't be ableist. Disabilities are not costumes. Number five, don't mock facial differences. Yes, even if you're mimicking a popular character.
You
Wearing
just sucked
prosthetics,
all the
mimicking
fun out
stars,
of
or using eye
Halloween
patches to
and
make your
life
costume
itself.
scarier is extremely messed up when you consider
These are
that
the
there are a wide
Karens
array
I'm
of people
talking
who have
about.
facial
This is the
differences. Facial
Karenocracy.
differences are not a costume. You can learn more by going to faceequalityinternational.org. Number six, don't
She's so
cosplay
perky
trauma.
about it all.
Dressing up as someone incarcerated, enslaved, or a survivor of war is unacceptable, and the scariest thing about it is the lack of empathy required to do it. If you want to Halloween respectfully, you have to be respectful. But I guess you have to want to be respectful too. Get
Yeah,
creative
you
instead
would,
of playing
wouldn't
into
you?
tired
There's
racist
a
tropes and
loophole.
people's real trauma. But I'm not going to
If
stop you.
people
Just
are
don't be surprised when
traumatized
you
by
get
Halloween,
canceled
they
on
need to
November
just stay
1st.
home. Keep the door locked really tight. Turn your lights off. Act like you're not home. Uh, I didn't want to suffer through that alone. Jess, yes, you can dress as a slutty nun. In fact, I encourage it. I think we should have more slutty nun costumes. And if anybody wants to appropriate Cajun culture, you have my full permission. Um, I give you the pass for that. So I just wanted to give you a little taste of what your future might be if this continues. It's not going to be my future, I guarantee. Okay, let's get into this emotion thing. Emotions, emotions, emotions. I think, honestly, I think it's low emotional intelligence on the part of people criticizing emotion. I think that's the only reason to criticize emotion is that you don't understand them. No, no, you will not be. And you want to know why you won't be? Because Saturday Night Live had a skit. This is in the 2010s. This is like the woke decade called Bayou Benny's Liberal Lagniappe, making fun of Cajuns. It was like a Cajun talk show, and it was making fun of the way we talk and how we act and everything. And then they have another couple of skits called Maine Justice, and it's like a courtroom in Maine, but it's like Louisiana somehow. And the joke is like, why would there be this Louisiana courtroom in Maine? And they have a little Cajun character. I don't know who the actor is that plays him, but he does the best representation of a Cajun I've ever seen. It's hilarious. He acts exactly like the people from back home. But they had no problem making fun of Cajuns on Saturday Night Live. You can't make fun of any other races, but Cajuns are still okay for white liberals to laugh at and make fun of. So yes, you could absolutely riff on Cajuns. Tom Segura, probably my favorite modern comedian, got a lot of flack for his Cajun jokes, and they were pretty bad, but that's what got me into them. They were funny as hell. As a Cajun, listening to those jokes, ripping my people apart, I laughed my ass off. If you're gonna make fun of Cajuns, make it funny. And they were so funny that when he got all this backlash from it, he doubled down and he did another bit in his next show, making fun of us even more. And they were just as funny. So if you're gonna make fun of a Cajun, make us laugh. Like we create delicious food, like Buddhists. Like we are not ourselves the delicious food. Yeah. Yeah, I grew up eating good, I'm not gonna lie. It's hard for me I knew when I moved up here to Seattle, I was giving up the people and the food. That like I knew they were not gonna cook to the Louisiana palate up here. Well, I think the point is power, conformity, social control, all the stuff you see coming from the left. I don't think they want you laughing at yourself because I think it's empowering to be able to laugh at yourself and other cultures. Eddie Murphy should have taught us that in the 80s. Richard Pryor before that, and all those other comedians. Okay, to start this emotion conversation, I'm going to go back to this chart that I love so much, our personality chart. Because a lot of the talk of why emotions are perceived as negative and why the expectation that you contain them is part of it's masking and code switching. Those are kind of related concepts to me. You're masking you're masking your emotions in an attempt to code switch, which means to adjust or accommodate yourself to norms different from your natural norms. Like when black people go in the workforce and learn not to talk black. They learn to talk white or not to talk as black. And then you see them at home and they're all, hey, girls, it's the girlfriend. Hey, how you doing? But at work, they don't talk like that. They talk very professional and proper. That's code switching. It's something that's expected of neurotypical people. And I like a good Kiatsi. Um, is that from Flavor Flav thing too? Or is that another reference? That's what I know it from. Speaking of black culture. Um, I don't code switch. What you see is what you get, but that's also because I'm trying to give the most authentic representation of me that I can. So I have maybe different goals, and I'm not willing to compromise on that. So speaking of authenticity, let's take a glance at this chart. So this is what I think is happening. I think emotions are all seen as these primitive instincts, and in order to be socialized, this average statistical person, the negative adjustment zone, see this no inner psychic milieu, the social instinct, which is also where I think it's also where the instinct to mask and code switch comes from, is what is kind of prompting this emotional suppression. So you're trying to socialize these primitive instincts, and so you end up with emotional restraint, composure, uh, that kind of stuff, self-control, emotional regulation, etc. Because you are trying to adapt your emotions to society. And this second, see, socialization controls primitive instinct. This second factor is the societal influence. First factor is the biological. That would be the emotions themselves, the chemical reactions that are the basis for emotions. The second factor is the societal context that you find yourself in when the emotions happen. And a lot of cultural, a lot of context require, or people believe require, a constraining of these emotions. But we also talked about this developmental potential. And as we move up the chart, this is what drives your individual personal growth. At the top here, we have what's called the personality ideal. You see authentism, autonomy, responsibility, all that stuff. So you can align these instincts to society and society's expectations, or you can align them to your personality ideal, which is not a social phenomenon. It's your acorn becoming your oak. It is what you would naturally become if you could be your authentic self and had the ability to guide and direct that growth. So look at developmental potential here. Look at some of the components of it. The instincts themselves. Also, this overexcitability. This overexcitability is one indication of a higher developmental potential. And the higher the developmental potential, the more you're able to draw on that to drive your growth up this chart. So OE is overexcitability. Look at the overexcitabilities. Emotional, intellectual, imaginational. Intellectual overexcitability that's when people spurg out on topics, geek out, data dump. It's when all the nerds get together and talk about the real nerdy conversation. For some reason, that's fine. But the emotional counterpart to that, emotional geeking out or emotional, to me, it's also a form of intelligence. But indulging your emotions the same way that an intellectual would indulge their intellect is somehow frowned upon. But emotional overexcitability is part of this developmental potential. So if you are restraining your emotions, You are also restraining your ability to develop in line with your personality idea. You're constraining your ability to be authentic. I've made this case before, but I think people are not, I think they see emotions as all this, and they don't have an eye for that emotions are sometimes this. And restraining them actually is damaging to the person, not helping the person. It may help them stay in this zone, the socialized zone, but it's not going to help them grow into the authentic self. So if somebody is telling you to repress your emotions, they might have your social health in mind. They may be looking out for you socially or professionally. They are not looking out for your personality development. Otherwise, they would not be telling you that. And that's why I fight so hard on this stream to have that not happen. Because this is a stream where people can come here and partake in that developmental process of growth. And you have to have your full excitabilities for that to happen, because that is part of your developmental potential. Okay, that is the nerdy personality, Dabrowskian personality theory explanation of it. I'm going to get into the AI explanation of it now. I'm just going to hit a few bullet points. Can you talk to me about the bias against emotion that exists in some cultures and help me to communicate the value of passion to those groups who don't seem to understand it or see it as a negative? It suggests emphasizing the role of emotion in problem solving. Passion and emotion are not the opposite of rational thinking, they're complementary. I have said this so many times. My thinking and my feeling are one activity. They work in tandem with each other. My thinking is working off of the data that my emotion is feeding into it. I need both to have the full range of what I'm trying to do. Passion provides the motivation and energy to push through challenges and setbacks that logical analysis alone can't always tackle. The second thing is to highlight emotion's impact on resilience and perseverance. That passionate people tend to have a resilience that carries them through tough times. I think the Stoic people would argue that they could also have that. I'm just saying passion is also one path to that resiliency. And I did get it to strawman the Stoic case for me, which I'll go over as well. Rather than causing them to give up when things get hard, their emotional investment keeps them moving forward. Another thing that came up today is like the ability to be efficient and get things done, and be structured and orderly or whatever. Hello, I've been doing this stream for over a year and a half now. Every single day, almost without fail, I have been here keeping this going. I have been getting this stream shit done and having all of my emotions in the process. I didn't need any German qualities to pull this off. I had co-host at different points. I had help at different points, but I was pretty much a one-man show for a lot of it too. I think the fact that I'm keeping this space going, sometimes almost single-handedly, speaks to my ability to get shit done and be effective and still have emotions not be a barrier to that. So I think there's a very skewed cultural bias when it comes to how some cultures view emotion, and they make assumptions not only about you as a person, but about your ability based on your level of emotional intensity. And I think that's what confuses me the most of all, because I think I'm being judged very unfairly on my ability due to factors that have nothing to do with my ability. It says to frame passion as a source of energy and engagement. Yes, yes, yes. Passionate individuals, we are often highly engaged in their work or interest. It's my passion that keeps me here. It is not my cold, logical rationality. It is not my work ethic. It is not my ability to be effective and get things done. It is my passion that keeps me here. My belief that I'm doing something valuable that has the potential to help others and benefit society. Something that I believe in so strongly. It's my belief in my vision. And I couldn't do any of that without passion. This type of emotional energy, it says, can transform workplace cultures and improve productivity. Please point me to where these workplace cultures are, because all it's done for me is got me fired. Except when I was teaching and working in adolescent mental health, it really helped me to connect with the kids and win their trust so that I could both educate them and help them with their mental health issues. The role of emotion in human connection. Um, I, I thought this was just basic accepted truth that emotions are foundational for human connection. Like we connect through our emotions. Um, and it says even in reserve cultures, emotions are valuable for social cohesion and effective teamwork. Another thing it brings up is, and maybe this is at the root of some of this bias against emotion, but the fear of loss of control. That many people might fear that emotion and passion will override their logic and lead to impulsivity or poor decision making or something like that. But that doesn't happen with me. I can think logically while I'm having an emotion. It's possible to balance emotion and reason. It's possible to have them complement each other and work together. So maybe that's a limitation on the part of these people more than anything universal. Um, because I find that my emotion and my rationality work in harmony. And so I wouldn't want to. I'm cutting off half of my cognition when I restrain my emotion and only go off of my logic. I've told stories of me having like sitting in a chair talking to people and them using the phrase that I'm acting out or getting scared that I'm like something's about to happen and I'm like, no, why do you think I'm not in control just because I'm having a strong emotion? Why is that acting out? I'm just sitting here. I'm not taking a single action. But in their mind they see it as acting out, and I think the fear is that I'm going to lose control and actually take an action. And I've demonstrated over and over and over that that's not what happens. Um, and then something it left out that I had to bring up was the role of emotion in establishing trust. That for me personally, I don't trust people as much that don't show emotion, that don't allow me access to their feelings, or that I sense are holding back a feeling. I trust open, honest displays of genuine feeling. And the AI agrees. It says emotion plays a crucial role in establishing trust because it signals authenticity. Trust, or I guess the kind of trust I'm talking about when I say I trust people that show emotion, is trust requires some level of vulnerability, or it can require some level of vulnerability. And that when people are showing that emotion, the AI says they're taking a risk. I'm not taking a risk when I show emotion any more than I'm taking a risk when I'm rocking or talking with my hands. That is just me. That's my personality. That's my physiology, my biology. It's not even anything I'm consciously doing. So it's not like, oh, I'm making myself vulnerable here by letting people see this emotion. Um, it's just my natural self. But that the act of vulnerability can inspire reciprocal trust and a deeper, more authentic bond. And then emotions as a signal of integrity. That genuine emotion is difficult to fake over time. And I agree. That's one reason I think I trust emotion, because I'm seeing that raw person that they're not kind of sculpting in some artificial way. And over time, you kind of get a baseline read of what that emotion is. And the AI is right. That's very difficult for people to fake long term. That's why I think it can be a good indicator of trust, or of who to trust. When people consistently express their feelings openly, it suggests that they're not hiding their intentions. And hang on one second. Um, I forgot what I was going to say. I lost it. It'll come back around. And that emotion builds relational depth. That trust isn't just about rational consistency, but emotional transparency as well. And that for a lot of people, that kind of emotional openness is necessary for that trust to develop and start. I asked it to contrast it with its opposite and make the Stoic case for emotional restraint. And actually, I think I learned a little bit more from here than actually from asking about emotions. So it's saying that the Stoic case is saying that emotional restraint is a path to rational decision making. That may be true for some people. That may be true for the Stoics. It is not true for me. I can make completely rational decisions in the middle of a strong emotion. That they don't interfere with each other. And so if people are trying to be rational and they find their emotions disruptive to that, that could be a case for minimizing the emotions when you're trying to make a rational decision. I would just say that does not apply to everybody, and to make the assumption that it does is a form of prejudice and stereotyping. It says emotions can cloud judgment and it can lead to impulsive actions, but it doesn't always have to. And they give the example of a leader facing a crisis, and I wonder if the emotion that people are concerned about is panic, which I think of panic as something different. I don't think of panic as just having an emotion. Panic is something very specific, and of course, yes, in a crisis, try not to panic. That could reduce your effectiveness, but that is not the full spectrum of emotion, and that's not really the emotions that I see police don't hear, or in the workplace, or in social setting. It's not specifically panic. It's all kind of strong, sometimes even positive emotion. Like here in Seattle, if you get too happy or excited about something, people are going to police you in the same way. They're going to tell you to calm down, or they're going to distance themselves a little bit from you if you're too, jubilant or joyous. It says Stoicism would encourage the leader to remain calm, control their reactions, and focus on practical solutions without letting panic or frustration interfere. I could agree, but most of the times, the emotions I'm having are not panic or frustration. Sometimes it's a little bit of frustration, but it doesn't interfere with the decision making. And that can inspire confidence in others who can look on them as stable and rational. I don't think people are less stable or rational because I see them having an emotion. So I guess that wouldn't apply with me, but maybe some people would see it that way. I would just say that I am able to focus on the same practical solutions without controlling my emotions. So maybe for Stoics, they need to do this, but not everyone does. And then self-control as a form of strength. That got talked about today on the stream a lot too. This valuing strength, and that emotion can be seen as kind of a form of weakness, I guess. And for the Stoics, that strength comes in mastering oneself, like self-mastery, including the emotions. And I guess I master my emotions in a different way. I master them I master them through expression, and Stoics may master them through regulation or control. And that restraining emotion can be seen as a discipline and a testament to one's ability to maintain composure and avoid actions they may regret. Again, it's a fear of loss of control. But if that's not the case with that person, then they're still going to be able to do all of this and have the emotion. It seems like a poor understanding of emotion, like going off of a very restricted set of emotional experiences and then drawing broad conclusions about the rest of humanity based on your individual or cultural relation to emotion. Here's one that's interesting. This one comes up a lot, and even on the panel verse, that emotions can make you vulnerable to external influence. Like if you show people your buttons, then they know how to push them, and then you're at the mercy of those people. So that if you hide your emotions or keep them private, and you never let people see what gets you worked up. People tell me that on the stream with the drama. Like they're trying to get a rise out of you, and once they see how to get a rise out of you, they're going to come here and keep pushing those buttons. It's kind of like emotional manipulation. And so the Stoics, by masking all of that, doesn't give them that opportunity. They don't give them that target, that area of attack. There may be something to that, but I think it comes at the price of your authenticity. So I would rather have my buttons pushed because those are my buttons. That's who I am. And people see that as an authentic part of me. Um, because I can manage, that's another thing. I can manage my emotional reactions even when my buttons are pushed, even when I'm triggered, even when I'm having an intense emotion. I still can manage it. I can still make it do what I want, or I can still drive it in the direction I want, etc. So I guess I don't have a fear of getting my buttons pushed. That reveals as much to me about the people pushing my buttons as it does about me. And that's valuable data to me. So I let people push my buttons because they're telling on themselves what in the process of doing it. And then inner peace and stability. I'll leave that one alone because that's a personal thing. Like it can a sense of calm and emotional equilibrium. I know some people meditate and do breathing exercises and stuff. I'm not really into that, but if you're looking for emotional peace, yeah, I guess that would be a reason you'd want to settle down some of those turbulent emotions. Um, it says during conflict, an emotionally open person might share their feelings of frustration or hurt, which is what I tend to do, seeing this as an honest approach to resolving the issue through mutual understanding. Right. And a stoic response would involve taking a step back and focusing on the problem rather than reacting to the hurt and aiming to resolve the issue through like logical discussion and calm conversation. It says a stoic might cultivate relationships based on mutual respect, consistency, and shared values. They may avoid being overly expressive to maintain a steady presence that their friends and family can rely on without becoming emotionally Yeah, but that I don't know who that person is. They're a calm, steady presence that I don't know. They're a calm, steady presence that's still strange to me. They haven't revealed those layers of emotional depth to me. So I don't mind the calm, steady presence, but if it's somebody that I want a deeper connection with, I'm going to want more than that at some point. Each approach has strengths. Emotional openness builds trust and connection, while stoic restraint fosters self-discipline and stability. Except I don't know why emotionality conflicts with stability. I can have stability and still be emotional. I've stabilized this channel for a year and a half, and I've had emotions the whole time through. The two did not conflict with each other. Depending on the context, okay, it could be contextual. And we talked about earlier, like with the code switching thing and adapting to workplace norms, or if you're networking with fancy people or important people, you might have to adapt yourself to their norms. And so I guess for people like me, that could be a limitation or a liability in those settings, in which case I just avoid those settings, which is why you see me where I am today and not with those people. Um, Emotions can be information signals. They carry useful information about what matters to us. They signal our values, our boundaries, and our priorities. I say this about anger all the time. Anger is telling you where your boundary is. It's telling you where you end and someone else begins. That is useful information. It's telling you what's important to you. I use that's one reason why I have to feel all my emotions, because that's the data that I use that's useful to me in the things I'm trying to do and accomplish. A lot of which is that personal growth, that aligning myself with that authentic personality ideal. This is an interesting statement that when we tune into our feelings without being overwhelmed by them. So maybe that's the issue, this emotional overwhelmingness. And I just have a very large emotional battery. I can take a high charge of emotion and not get overwhelmed. That happened on psychedelics. Like when you do LSD or mush, you have an enormous amount of emotional energy, chemical energy running through your body that you have to just tolerate. And so I've developed a strong tolerance. I've always had a natural tolerance to emotion, but I don't get overwhelmed by my emotions. like a lot of people do. Even the closest I've come to it, I guess, is the grief when I lost Mike. That kind of shut me. It was called acute stress reaction. It my whole system just kind of collapsed and shut down. But that was the most overwhelming emotion I've ever felt in my life, and I think that was an exceptional circumstance. So in fact, a lot of my growth, my post-traumatic growth, was recovering from that shutdown and learning to have those emotions again. And I've said before how about a year later, when I had moved back to New Orleans and got this little office job at a hospital, I was having difficulties with one of my coworkers, and I was ranting to a friend one day about it. And she made the comment that, Jeff, I don't know if you realize it, but this is the first time you've been angry like this in a year. You're getting your emotions back. She said, this is progress. You were so numb for so long. The fact that this coworker is even able to irritate you was a sign of progress, not a sign of regress, not a sign of emotional shortcoming. It was a sign that my normal state of emotionality was coming back, which I considered a strength. Emotional intelligence can enhance rationality and involves recognizing, understanding, and managing emotions. And I don't know how you can recognize and understand them if you don't let yourself feel them. That's what confuses. Like, how are the Stoic people recognizing and understanding their emotions if they're pinching them off the minute they happen? I don't understand how they're getting that information. They can help us navigate complex social environments. They've never helped me do that, but that could be the tism. Rather than seeing emotions as inherently disruptive, emotional intelligence uses them to build better relationships, resolve conflicts, and achieve goals collaboratively. Yes, to all of that, I would say. They can motivate action and resilience, and they can combine with rationality. They can combine rationality with compassion for clarity. So the emotion of compassion and empathy, if you allow those to come through, those can be combined with the rationality and can actually help and improve the decision making and provide like additional clarity, I guess. Like when a doctor combines their clinical expertise with the empathy to like really tune into what's going on with the patient instead of just like seeing them mechanistically as a textbook case. Emotions and clarity through acceptance and not suppression. Accepting emotions without allowing them to dictate actions can actually lead to greater clarity. Yes, okay, this sentence right here I think summarizes all of it. Because this is what I do. I accept my emotions without allowing them to dictate my actions. And that provides me with a greater clarity because I can add that emotional information to the rational information and get a broader picture of the situation. And it gives an example of like a high stress work environment where someone might feel frustration or anger, and instead of suppressing it, they acknowledge it, and it allows them to understand the source and address the issue directly. That's another thing, especially with PTSD. If you're having an emotion, it's usually a composite emotion of all of the past emotions. It's emotional flashbacks that get triggered by whatever your trauma triggers are, which PTSD can spread. So whatever the initial cause, the changes in your brain, you can start becoming hyperreactive to other things besides the initial trauma. And so one thing I do when I'm in the middle of a strong emotion is I'll start trying to trace it back to all the past experiences with that similar emotion because it's compounding all of those together. I'm not just reacting to what that one person just did. I'm reacting to every person in my entire life that's ever did something similar to that person. And it's all like being focused on this one event. And so if you can understand the source, and you can usually trace it all the way back to childhood somewhere, you can start to understand why you're having the emotion, where it's coming from, what the source of it is, and that helps you start to manage it and direct it rather than you being at the mercy of it or being overwhelmed by it. And maybe that's one reason that I don't get overwhelmed. by it because I am doing this cognitive activity while the emotion is happening. Okay, I think that's all I wanted. I really just wanted to get some thoughts down on video, and I will open up a panel now. I don't mask mine; I just control them. So like is if you're having an emotion, are we seeing the full emotion, like the full range of the emotion, or are you like reducing it by control? I guess I'm trying to understand the control part. Yes, yes, that's exactly. Is that a band? Litany Against Fear. Um, that's exactly what I do. I let them pass over me and through me. I don't try to block them in any way. And then they bring a whole bunch of emotional data as they're doing that I know how to identify and incorporate into my rational cognition. Uh, let me. There's the link. All right, I'll open up a panel. Also, I'm supposed to watch stuff in Discord tonight, so I don't know how long the stream will go for. I'm gonna break at some point to go do that, but I could probably go for an hour or two. I don't know. We'll see what the needs are. Hello, sir.
Hey,
What's up? I think you're having that sound issue again.
yeah. Oh,
Oh,
okay.
I can hear you. Never mind.
Okay, great. Yeah, I had to fix it because I still had the stream up and I had this. I was hearing you twice, and it was
Oh,
confusing me for a second. So yeah, good. Um, like review of everything you just said, basically all that stuff about the use of emotions in I guess as we feel them in the moment is kind of what you were going at.
yeah, I think so. I think Stoicism is a subset. It's one approach, but I think people that use that approach may not be aware of other equally valid approaches, and they may make some assumptions about emotion based on their bias. Which I mean, we all do. We all have our personal and cultural biases, and I guess part of growing and learning is becoming aware of other people's biases and approaches.
Hmm. Yeah, what is stoicism to you?
Well, I know it as a specific philosophical system that developed during Hellenistic times, Alexander's empire. When that's kind of when philosophy, Greek philosophy, was more about like understanding reality and cosmology and ontology and stuff. And after that, philosophy had less of that central role to the society because that was not as important when you had all of these other cultures blending. And so it became more of like, what is the best way to live your life? It became more like moral philosophy. Like in the midst of this chaotic cosmopolitan society, what is the best path for having the kind of life that I want to have? And the two main ones that developed were Stoicism and Epicureanism. In fact, I did an AI thing on that the other day too. And Stoicism is more attached to, at least philosophically at its origins, to ideas of like cosmic fate and determinism and being aligned with the larger kind of the universe. And the universe is structured, so you're aligning yourself to this universal structure and your internal structure. And so there's some metaphysical beliefs that go along with it. And then Epicureanism doesn't have that sense of a larger cosmological kind of unity that you have to align yourself to.
Gotcha. Okay, that's pretty much correct. Yeah, especially if we're talking about for modern purposes. If somebody's a Stoic, obviously they're not necessarily going to be um, spiritual in the same way that like the ancient Greeks and Romans were.
Right,
Because
that's the part I think that dropped out of modern Stoicism is that extra, like what you call it, spiritual dimension. I'm trying to find my AI summary because I asked it to compare and contrast the two philosophies.
Mhm.
Oh, maybe I did it on Gemini instead.
And there was one thing Bill Bez and I were talking a lot about is the contrast between um, cultures of coldness and cultures of passion. And you talked a lot about that yourself just now, sort of adding
Yeah.
to it.
And the Germans have the concept of Gesellschaft and Gemeinschaft too, like
Mhm,
the cold, impersonal cultures and the more individual, one-on-one cultures with relationships with more warmth to them.
mhm. Yeah, and it's just interesting that like maybe it has to do with something like the climates of the cultures that seem to have those, because it does sometimes seem that those cultures seem to live in climates that are in fact actually colder, and we describe them as cold, even though it's more of a metaphorical cold rather than a temperature thing. Man, LA Stoic doesn't react to the Dodgers winning again. Rather, they react to how people celebrate when the Dodgers win tonight.
Go
That's
Dodgers.
right.
Who are they playing, Spike? It's hang on, let's see. The key beliefs of Stoicism philosophically is, well, hang on, where is, oh, Epicurean, to live in accordance with nature and cultivate virtue. That the universe is governed by a divine the logos, the divine reason, and everything happens as part of a larger plan. And that the soul is rational and immortal. We have Plato's rational soul. Virtue is the only true good, and all other things are indifferent. And the best way to achieve happiness is to accept your fate. So see, that's like passive and disempowered to me, just to accept an external fate. Cultivate self-control and live a simple, disciplined life. And Epicureanism is that the universe is governed by natural law and there is no divine intervention. Everything's kind of organic and natural. The soul is material and mortal and ends at death, and pleasure is the highest good. But it's not simple natural pleasure. It's more of like a higher pleasure. And to me it's the pleasure of being your authentic self. And that the best way to achieve happiness is to cultivate friendships, engage in intellectual pursuit, and also live a simple and modest life. And so Epicureanism focuses more on pleasure and Stoicism more on virtue. And Stoicism has a more deterministic view of the universe, and a more and they believe the soul is immortal.
Mhm. So, do you consider yourself more of an Epicurean, Jeff,
Oh yeah,
philosophically?
absolutely. Like Cajun culture is absolutely an Epicurean culture.
Yeah,
It's very
and I'm
much
not a
living for the moment, joie de vivre.
yeah, and I'm not a spiritual person myself, but philosophically, I look toward Stoicism for guidance. That's
Does
my
the concept of virtue substitute for spirituality in your world, like
yeah.
as a higher moral good that you're striving for?
Yes. For me, um, I avoid doing anything that would require me to give up my virtue. And maybe I don't use the word virtue every time, but essentially that is what I'm aiming to do. I try to have qualities of good character, um, and I find that pleasure, to use that word again, is difficult if I don't have these things. In the long run, I cannot have pleasure if I do not have virtue.
And I would say I do that too. Like I strive for virtue as well. I'm not a stoic, but that also plays a role in my life. I try to live from higher values over lower ones.
Hmm. And what's interesting is um, you've talked about how part of you know what makes you who you are, right? Your the influences in which you draw yourself is like your Cajun background, for example, right? What is passed on, and shared among Cajun folks. What exactly would you say are the key features that distinguish Cajuns culturally and such?
Oh well, I did a whole I have a whole uh, thing on that, but let me just highlight a few. One of them is related to work ethic. It says there's the absence of the equivalent to a Protestant work ethic. Because when the Anglo-Saxons came there and observed this, they thought we were perceived to be lazy, lacking enterprise, obstinate, contentious, stupid. That was the British impression, and they let me see. We were hardworking, yet we practiced no work ethic, nor did we honor one. And I have a hard time explaining this to employers that we work and we get things done, but we don't have a we don't have a conscious philosophy about work. Like we work and we have fun at the same time. The essence of Cajun culture, I think, is the idea of joie de vivre, living in the moment and enjoying life for the moment, and getting the maximum amount of enjoyment and pleasure out of the moment that you have. Good food, good friends, good people, good times, good music, a good movie, a good stream. I like to maximize what I can get from the moment. And so we can work and get things done, but while we're working, we're going to be more focused on how to enjoy the moments, each moment that we're working, than we are on any kind of formal work ethic. And we don't virtue signal. We don't like have to see everybody notice us working hard and working a certain way, that we have a work ethic. We just do the job. We don't make a big deal about it.
Hmm.
And we're very passionate. We don't restrain our emotions. So from a very young age, everyone has this free flowing emotion. Nobody stigmatizes anybody's emotions or tells them they shouldn't be feeling anything or feeling a certain way. We adapt to whatever emotion somebody's feeling. If somebody's crying, we adjust to that. If somebody's angry, we adjust to that. We don't try to interfere with that emotion. We let that natural passion flow forth.
Very interesting. Yeah, the idea of the Protestant work ethic is interesting because, like, when I think about it, I can see how it has impacted me somewhat. But I did not have a Protestant upbringing, um, and I'm not a Protestant. So, and nevertheless, I feel like it has sort of found its way into the broader culture that folks like me are still impacted by. Especially, I think someone like me who doesn't have another type of distinct culture. When if I were to try and think, what is my culture, right? Like, we have both talked about this before, Jeff, right? Like, I don't really have a specific subculture into which I fit. Like, I can't say I'm something distinct like a Cajun, for example.
Uh, After seeing you in Dobest today, I would dispute that, because you definitely had things in common between the two of you that you didn't have with the rest of it. So I think you're part of a culture that you don't realize yet, because you haven't experienced enough contrast with other cultures to start identifying what makes your culture a culture, because it's the larger dominant culture. So it's harder to see it, it's invisible to you, but I think that you have it. And one of
Um,
those woke threads I might go over tomorrow. That is one of the arguments they use, that white people are lost because they don't have a sense of culture, and that's one of the sources of this anxiety around whiteness, because they, like, people like me that are Cajun, we don't have to worry about whiteness because we have an actual we're from a place, we have an actual culture. Italians, Sicilians have an actual culture, so whiteness means less to them, the concept of whiteness. But for white people that don't have a strong sense of a specific culture, they will have more anxiety about being white, and who are we as a people, and what is our culture, is it oppressing the other races, etc., because they don't have a definite sense of a specific culture, and so it can
well,
be exploited as whiteness.
I think one thing that's happened to a lot of Europeans who have come here is so some um, kept their, we'll say, continental roots to a point, and I think this. So the Cajuns being distinct, it somewhat maintained a sense of the original Frenchness,
Oh
right? They
no,
have the
absolutely not. We lost that in Acadia, and we developed we were the first European culture to develop a distinctly North American identity, and we became so unique as a culture that when we returned to France, They didn't even recognize it. Like we couldn't even interface with the French people because we had changed and become such a different people from mingling with the Indians, from having to
Okay.
adapt to the environments of North America and change the way we did things and our customs. So we developed our own unique culture and ethnicity that
Okay.
kind of severed those ties with Europe.
So you're almost like the what is the Quebecois?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So more like that. Okay. Um yeah, and so with my family, there wasn't anything like. So I mean, you were noticing that me and Dolbez apparently we seem to we feel things similarly. You could say that in a cultural way, and even though he and I are from different places, right? And so the Cajuns are like a distinct area, like they've coalesced around a place. You can
Yeah.
if you want to go, like if I want to like go on a hunt for Cajuns, I would know where their grounds are. And whereas Dolbez and I we just seem to happen to be similar in some ways that are not immediately explainable. But there is this thing in America where um a lot of Europeans don't have any. We could even say that even though the Cajuns don't have a connection to the continental Frenchness anymore, the Frenchness, it sort of germinated and became a new thing, and it was
Yeah.
still important that it happened, right?
And it is, and we have ties to France. And I've seen videos of cultures in the parts of France that we originated from,
Hmm.
and I can recognize some of our features. Like the way they sit around the table and eat, some of their music, some of
Hmm.
the way they talk. I can see some of the cultural antecedents to what the Cajun culture is, even in France today.
Yeah, and so like for my part, um, I think my father had more of like a General Baptist upbringing, but um,
Wasp.
yeah, it was something like that, and um, but he didn't really fit in with that. Interestingly, my father is kind of a Southern liberal, um, and
Is he the Slavic side?
no, that's my mother. And my mother is adopted, so this is just what we've been told. My mother was raised by Catholics whose own like ancestors were German Mormons out in the Californian frontier back in like the 19th century. They later converted to Catholics, and then my mother was adopted by one such family. Um, and so like her family were like those people, like they were like German descended people with pastures in Northern California and stuff. Um, and so that's what she was raised in. Although if we're go, this is why I don't necessarily count the Slavic part of me much, because it's not like I can genetically inherit a culture of a people that she wasn't exposed to, right?
Does she
That's not
know
how
what her
culture works.
actual background is?
So she was told, her adopted parents were told like what her mother was and what the biological father was, which was the apparently my mother was the product of a one night stand between a Slavonian woman and a Polish man
Oh, okay.
in the 60s.
But she
Um,
was adopted into a WASP culture, a Germanic
so,
culture.
yeah, so a Germanic Mormon culture that was converted to Catholic, but the most of the family legacy was this German Mormon background.
Okay.
Um, and uh, and so I don't even know what I would. I don't even know how much that really. I think of my mom's upbringing as more like West Coast middle class, and my father is more like poor Southerner. And he just happened to be kind of a liberal in a background that was more conservative. Like he wanted to be a writer, and then he went to California. He hitchhiked there, became an X-ray tech, and he seemed to thrive more in the West Coast than he did in his hometown.
Hmm.
Um, and I've learned like just from bits and pieces that I remember my Mima. Um, she, we got along with her well. Um, she always seemed happy with us. She seemed like a sweet old lady. she died when I was pretty young. So she was uh I want to how old? She was I must have been like yeah, no, I was 9 when she died, right? So uh and I only ever saw like or heard good things about her, but I've since learned that she was not nice to my father. Even in adulthood, she could be quite mean to him, say some nasty things to him, and she seemed to think that he like ditched us and that ditched not us because I wasn't around it, but ditched like his roots and was ashamed of his roots and thought he was too good for his roots. I don't know how true some of this is, but these are like details I picked up. So he for whatever reason kind of didn't take a lot of what was given to him. There's a hard working part. I think the only thing that he really kept was like this Protestant work ethic, this struggle to endure and survive, and that's a big part of his morality. So a lot of his like um I feel like he imparted a lot of his work ethic onto me. He often talked about life as being a test, and every day is like its own mini test, and you just got to get through to the end of the day. And that's sort of a, it's not, it's kind of a, to him, that's like an uplifting way of looking at life. But to some people, that might seem like a very gloomy way of
That's.
looking
I was
looking
thinking
at
how
life.
joyless it seems.
Yeah.
Does he ever have any fun?
Well, the thing is, he could be a pretty upbeat person. He has a good sense of humor. He I know I've since learned that he had really bad days at work, but this is after the fact. I would hear like he just sort of said, yeah, like because he would never come home angry or disappointed about things. He was happy to see his family. And whereas my mother, if she had a bad day at work, you better believe we felt it, right? We were the victims of her anger. The whole if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. She may
Uh-huh.
not have been a southern mother, but she sure brought it to life like a southern mother. My
I had
God.
one of those too. Yep.
Yeah, and so uh but my father was not like that. He was a charmer. It's just the thing is like he could be like I said, he could be very cold and stone faced a lot, but he had this subtle charm to him and he could kind of how like uh if you watch like clips of Trump when he's like not being attacked, he's kind of a charmer. He'll figure a
He was
person
like
out
that
and
on
he'll
Joe Rogan the whole time.
yeah, and he'll work his charm with them. And
Hmm.
I watched that today, by the way. Um, and so my father's like that. Like he'll do that, and he can be quite funny. Um, and he even when he's in and he was 40 when I was born, so he's never been young while I've been alive, and he's had health issues throughout much of his life while I've been alive, like a lot of arthritis and stuff. So I've seen, I've mostly known him as this aged man who's just progressively getting worse. And, he was not in his prime while I've been around, right? He's, and since I'm only 33, he's lived most of his life without me. I have not been around for a majority of his life, right?
Oh,
And so, um, um, so I've seen something of him as like a withering person, often has just joint pain and things like that. But he's never been a foul or unfun person. He's always meant to sort of just pull his spirits up and be friendly and fun with his family as much as he can. Um so yeah, but like and just in terms of like of a lot of other things, like he's not overly expressive. He's never really been one to put on a show to like, if something is brought to him, he doesn't have this extravagant reaction to it to try and like he won't pretend that he likes something more than he does, right? But that doesn't stop
I
him
don't
from
either.
being pleasant. But some people do that, right? They'll act like something is like if you show them something, they'll act more impressed by it than they actually are. Sometimes there are people who are like that.
Yeah. I
Um,
never know how to tell.
yeah. Well, I kind of feel like um half the time when I get a positive response from something, that's what people are doing, and only half the time
I
where
know it
people,
happens in relationship. Like when you're dating, people will act like they're more into your hobbies than they actually are to make a good
yeah,
impression on you.
yeah, or they're at least like they're definitely giving you like a good chance to like maybe they're not writing your hobbies off immediately, right? Um,
Hey, Shift, thank you for the vibes.
but yes, thanks for the vibes, and so um, Yeah, but the one thing I think he did get from his family is that work ethic, and I think it's this Protestant work ethic. And the Protestant work ethic is, in many ways, it's not necessarily this upbeat thing, right? It's life is hard, we struggle, we work, we get through it, and we do the best we can, kind of thing. And that's basically all
Yes,
there is to
and
it.
I agree with a lot of that, and I would say my culture would say the same thing, but they would also say there's no reason you can't have fun in the process. Like, there's no reason to deprive yourself of fun just because that's the case.
Yeah. And then I've had other influences. I think one thing that has interested me about um why like the Germanic spirit is interesting to me, and is I think by influence by the military, and how the US military culture was significantly influenced by the Prussian military. Like, of all the foreign militaries that influenced us, other than the British, of course, the Prussian had like one of the most outsized influences on modern military culture. And so it's just fascinating, like the things that I learned, because the military has influenced me as an adult. It just it had, I think, a more of an influence on me in college than my
So
actual
you were
college
different when
classes.
you went in than when you came out.
Yeah, I'm changed to some degree for what the military imparted onto me, and it was largely in how it tried to develop me as a potential officer rather than simply as an enlisted man.
Like leadership training.
Right. And that's where the Prussian side comes in. Is the Prussian part was, what did they try to do as leaders in a military sense, rather than simply drilling the hell out of soldiers and having these obedient animals that march into battle, right? But it's the mental part of it.
Hmm. Do you
Yeah.
feel do you feel do you feel like a leader or called to lead? Like, is that a role you see
I felt
yourself in?
like that. I felt like that more when I was younger. I feel that less so now, and I'm less inclined to take a position of leadership unless I know it is specifically wanted of me, which, to this day, I don't see that occurring.
Well, I mean, don't really. I could think of context where you'd make a good leader.
I can think of contexts where I'd make a good leader too. I mean, I had to practice like leading units in the woods that for like 2 hours, and like finding, like locating where the enemy is, and then getting attacked, and then like how do we respond to that? And it's all mocked, but it's like you have paintball shooting at you, and you definitely don't want more of your guys to get taken out than theirs and look like an idiot. So it's like things that are like stressful, and in the moment you're on the spot, and you're being like graded for it too. Like, I've had to do that, and then I've had to do things in real life where I was in charge, and um,
You lead a good
that worked
Monopoly
just fine.
game.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't sure how that went. But from a leadership perspective, anyway. But I realize I don't have to lead just because I have the capabilities of being a leader, and I can be right. So not just leading, but like being in command as well, like where there's a formal accountability that comes with it. That doesn't mean I have to. In fact, I could never lead again, and it would be just fine.
Yeah, yeah, same way, same here. I don't like having to lead because then I feel like I like being around people who are at the same level of competency I am. And if I have to lead, then there's some kind of competency gap, and that puts me in a different role, and it kind of isolates me.
Well, part of why there are leaders is because some people need leaders, right? So the existence of leadership anywhere is, to some extent, somebody has to be leading.
Yeah, and like I said, I can think of maybe specific situations, limited
Mm.
situations. But I'm not a follower either. I don't like other people trying to lead me or tell me what to do unless I ask them. I'm a egalitarian. I like being around people where that are all more or less on the same level.
Are Cajuns easy to lead, or are they hard to lead?
Well, I know that when we the Civil War, they would come and conscript us into the troops, and we would defect all the time. Like the minute we would march near our homes or our fields, we would just walk out of the troop and run across the fields and go back to our homes. They couldn't keep us in the army. Every opportunity we had, because it wasn't our war, we didn't see it as our war. We didn't want to be fighting it in the first place. So we would just walk
Hmm.
away every chance we got. It
Interesting.
was
Did they
very
like?
hard for them to keep us in the platoon.
Did they send agents into Louisiana to like punish Cajuns who didn't stick around?
No,
No.
I think they gave up. Yeah, I wouldn't. No, we're not easy to lead. We're easy to lead. You have to know how to lead us. Like I guess our own people know how to lead us, but I think
Hmm.
outsiders would find us very difficult to lead if they don't understand our psychology or our culture.
Is there conflict like between like the Louisiana state government and the Cajun local populace sometimes? Is there like a
Not really.
disconnect
In
there?
fact, our current governor is a Cajun. We've had Cajun governors.
Okay.
We're one of the Louisiana has so many different cultural groups, and we're one of the larger cultural groups there. So the state is pretty familiar with
Okay.
Cajuns and how to work them politically. I mean, we had Edwin Edwards. He was elected 4 terms to governor. He was Cajun.
Okay.
He's the
I need
longest
to look
serving
at that.
governor in our history. He's the one that beat David Duke.
Okay. Oh wow, he lived a long time. He only died recently.
He was like our
Very
Trump.
interesting. Gotcha. Was he
In fact, I have a picture with him. I I have
he
we
was more your Trump than Huey Long or whatever?
Huey Long was our other Trump. Yeah, I'd say Edwin more. Edwin was better. I mean, Edwin stuck around for. Huey made a lot of enemies. Edwin was better at the
Yeah, because
networking
Huey
and
got shot.
political game. Yeah, he got shot.
And he did not survive like Trump did.
In fact, I remember touring the Capitol when I was young, and you could see the bullet hole. When you tour the Capitol, they have the wall with the bullet hole in it that they show you of where
Oh
he got
wow.
shot.
Was Huey
Was that
Long
Jack
Cajun?
Ruby? I think it was Jack Ruby.
Jack Ruby shot
JFK.
the guy who shot JFK. He
Oh.
shot or the
Oh,
guy
oh,
who
he shot Lear. Okay, which was
yeah,
the
Lee
one
Harvey
that? It
Oswald.
was some doctor, I think. Carl Weiss.
Okay, seems like Huey Long was not Cajun.
But yeah, he was like Trump, and he ran as a populist, and he amassed his power through his populism and giving free shit to the poor people. He's the reason we have free textbooks in school and all that stuff. I think he helped
Yay.
get electricity to the rural areas, but then he exploited that power, and he became like he locked down all of the political institutions.
Yeah,
Everybody had to go through him to get anything done.
yeah, he was like almost like as close to like a dictator as you could have in a state government, right?
And he was on the socialist side too. So he's what he was
Hmm.
like probably the closest we had to a socialist get elected.
Yeah, interesting fellow. Um, yeah, and so it's interesting to think about all this, like how um, individuals are shaped by the cultures that spit them out, and but then sometimes it doesn't affect everyone the same way.
Right,
Um,
because of nature. I think, in fact, I think it was Dolbez. I was talking about this with they that the current thinking is it's like 70 or maybe 80% nature and 20 or 30% nurture.
yeah. Well, it's interesting because, like, Dolbez and we talk about this thing called like a Germanic spirit, and it's an interesting phenomenon because obviously this wide group of people, like we talked about how there are subtleties among the Germanic peoples in which there's these similarities, but then they differentiate over time. But they share something that seems to have been passed down culturally, even as the Germanic peoples went from being barbarians to developed civilizations. Right? There was a time when they were looked down upon as inferior and primitive by the Romans, because they just lived in huts basically, and
Right.
um,
They were the barbarians, right?
yeah, like they they
That's
they were. It's called the barbarian invasion of Rome, right? And
did
they
are they
they
the ones that attacked
Mhm.
the Greeks too, where the word barbarian comes from?
Well, the barbarians, the Greeks didn't have as much uh, interaction with the Germanic peoples. But the Greeks used it to refer to anyone who just didn't speak a different language because it
Yeah.
sounded like bar 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 to them. And in fact, there is a word in Czech that the Czechs use, or not in Czech, well maybe not in Czech, but in Slavic languages that they use to refer to the Germans, and literally translated from like these Slavic languages, it means a person who can't talk, which is similar to the idea of a barbarian. Like the word barbarian is essentially saying there's somebody who can't talk because we speak Greek, and they just go
Right.
bar 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 bar.
They don't talk right, and we speak
Right?
fancy. We
Yeah,
speak
we
proper.
talk right. It's like that Dave Chappelle meme where he's dressed up as a Klansman. He's like I can't understand you. Go back to your country.
It's
Wah wah.
linguistic prejudice. What it
Yeah.
is.
Um. But I
It's a
think like
class marker.
that that skit he does kind of just encapsulates what people feel in their gut when they hear someone they don't understand. I
But
think
were
Dave,
those Germanic, like the Visigoths and Ostrogoths and all
yeah,
that? Was it,
yeah,
that's Germanic?
and in fact, it's believed even that the Goths originated as far as like the as Gotland, which is that island just off the coast of Sweden. If you ever like look up a map of Sweden in the Baltic Sea, um, it's believed that they migrated from there into Germany, and then that tribe migrated farther south into the Roman territory.
The Germanics, Celts, Iberians, Helvetii, Thracians, Illyrians, and Sarmatians. Those were all the barbarian tribes.
Yeah, so the Gauls were originally a Celtic people. Like so,
Yeah,
what we think of as the Celts was basically France, Spain, and the British Isles,
yeah.
and then the Spanish culture was basically the Spanish Portuguese culture was basically replaced with more of a Romantic culture. Um, and the Celtic identity narrowly survived in the Basque country, which is the small pocket of northern Spain. In France, Celtic culture mostly persevered in Brittany. Um, so the Bretons, or Britons sometimes as they're called, um, retained some of their Celtic heritage. But otherwise, the French culture mostly became an amalgamation of the Romantic influences of the Romans and then the Germanic influences of the Franks. Um, so yeah, that's sort of the Celtic culture really got curb stomped the most by the Germanic and the
Were the
Frankish
Franks considered
influences.
Germanic?
Yes, they were Germanic, and the Frankish language that Charlemagne spoke is actually considered to be like essentially Old High German. It was not a Romantic language. He was speaking something much more akin to German than modern day French, even though some people consider the Frankish dominance of Gaul as the beginning of the French nation itself.
And
Um,
English is a Germanic language.
yes, and if I go back to Anglo-Saxon, like itself, what that hybrid language of what the Angles and the Saxons were speaking, Anglo-Saxon, it's much more similar to German
Yeah.
in some ways. We've taken so many influences from other languages because England had, um, like I mentioned before, it had significant influence from the Norman French, um, and then we've imported we because we've become such a global language. We've imported a lot of other influences as well. Like
Right.
and in English, it's a little easier for us, I think, to import words. Like we have more of a standard process for that than other languages too. Um, so there's just a lot going on. We're a very flexible language, so we
Yeah.
don't sound
And
very
then we have the Latin too that made its way in
yeah.
through the scholars and the priests,
Yes. So there's that as well.
which is
Yeah.
that's romance.
But I think culturally the English, are still more of that Germanic thing, and like you kind of hear it expressed in English culture as maintaining that stiff upper lip, right? Like it's considered the appropriate behavior for English gentlemen to do that, right? And that's sort of them maintaining some of that Germanic coldness, which is an interesting thing. And
The
so there's
British?
something,
Oh,
yeah,
like that British Reserve.
yes,
Yeah, I
right,
noticed that. Zoom in with British people.
right,
Very
and
common.
they it's something that like the very posh, aristocratic British say like this is the
They're
sign
very
that you're,
polished.
yeah, right,
Very
and so
proper.
they basically say they're sort of like I'm a good because the British like high classness is kind of just based on what they think is being a good Englishman, right? They're not. It's not like this Han
And it's more
Titanic type
stratified.
thing.
Like their accents and their language is
Mhm.
more. You could tell someone's social status by how they speak.
Well, the thing about the posh accent in particular is it's a more deliberately artificial, right? I mean, we could say all accents are artificial, but the posh one was actually a result of the emergence of the modern education system in Britain in the 19th century, and the government wanted to develop a universal, like an established way to speak English, and so the posh accent was actually a creation of that educational system. It's not based on any particular locality.
Wait,
So the way they
how do they overcome that? Like speaking in a different accent in the home. Like how do they get it
well
to take? Was it
well
boarding
so
schools?
so some of it was, yeah, there's the schools teaching kids how to speak, and like this is how you, and then of course the upper class basically started speaking that way. They
So they
basically taught
reinforced
themselves
it at
they
home
taught
as
themselves
well.
to speak fancy. So like suddenly you hear the British upper class speaking in this posh way, and then it is associated with a good way to speak. And a similar thing kind of happened in the US. So that transatlantic accent you hear. So when you think about how FDR spoke, he was a New Yorker. He does not sound like a New Yorker like Trump does. They're both rich New Yorkers. But Trump talks like a New Yorker on the streets. If you've ever heard a clip of FDR, he doesn't sound like that. He had that very kind of American posh way of speaking that no longer really sticks around in the American upper class. People, like when you hear about that old timey talk, the way people in movies speak a lot, like old movies from the 40s and 50s, that was the transatlantic accent. That was a similar attempt to create this general correct American way, and it had similarities to British posh, but with more Americanisms mixed into the pronunciations. Yeah, so
Wow.
it's interesting that we attempted it in our own country, but it didn't quite stick. It died out after about halfway through the 20th century for whatever reason. It might be because the West Coast dialect became what was dominant in um, mass media, the emergence of television. It could be that, right? And you might even say that the way I speak is more similar to like a West Coast dialect than anything
I would
particularly
have
Southern.
never picked it out.
I
I,
think that's the thing
I,
with
I
the
remember our
language. Yeah.
philosophy teacher telling us that if you want to communicate with the most people in America, you to learn the Chicago accent, like the Chicago Midwest accent, because that's the standard to the American ear. That's the one all the newscasters speak in, and that's like the most generic, broad-reaching American accent.
Yeah, and that's the one that took over the West Coast. So
Oh,
like
so
the
it's the same
Hollywood,
accent.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So like the
Although up
Hollywood
here
accent.
they have some they say bag instead of bag. You put your groceries in a bag,
Oh,
and so
okay.
there's a little tiny like little local idiosyncrasies that I can tell the difference. There's definitely a Pacific Northwest accent, but it's very subtle.
Yeah, I would think there's still some remnants of the the settlers of the Pacific Northwest that you get there a bit. Um, yeah, it is interesting that like like we can do that kind of that transatlantic accent. We've heard on TV enough that we could mimic it a bit, but nobody
It seems
actually talks
when I
like
heard
that.
it growing up, it seemed fake. Like, and that's the one they would use in the cartoons. Like when the Looney Tunes are narrating things, it's in that
Hmm.
accent. And it just seems so. I'm like, people don't really speak that way. These people
It's
are
like what you remember
forcing
of
that
people talking
accent.
on radios would sound
Yeah,
like.
even as a kid, it sounded forced. It did not
Hmm.
sound like a way that any human naturally spoke.
Yeah, like if I were, I could like maybe read something. Like if I were reading
I
a
wonder if we could
telegram,
play
right?
FDR. You think that's copyrighted?
No, that has to be public domain. It's FD fucking R. I
Here,
mean,
let's hear some
it's, it, look up
FDR
fireside.
accent.
Look up some fireside chats or something. That has to be public domain.
FDR mocks Republican promises.
There we go.
Roosevelt speaking about cancer of Nazis.
There we go.
This is not a good example. Let me find a different one. Did Roosevelt have it?
Yeah, he had it. He's like the example of it in the way presidents talk, especially because he did the fireside chat. So we actually have a lot of recordings of him. Whereas Truman was from Missouri, so he spoke more like that kind of.
All right, let's see if I get copyright hit for this. He's talking about Nazis.
Okay. Are any of these good dudes?
They were the same playbook. He looks very unhappy.
I think
Never before, since Jamestown and Plymouth Rock,
Yeah, that's not
has
a
our
people don't
American
talk that way.
civilization been in such danger as now. Frankly and definitely, there is danger ahead. Danger against which
It's not a
we
natural
must prepare.
conversational style.
But we well know that
It's
we
like he's
cannot
reading.
escape danger or the fear of it by crawling into bed and pulling the
The bed.
covers over our heads. If Great Britain goes down, the Axis powers will control the continents of Europe and Asia and Africa and Australasia
So
and the high seas.
I don't listen to the whole thing, but are you saying he had to learn to talk that way?
Well, he was born into the the New York upper class, so he was probably like his tutors and stuff probably taught him to speak that way, and it probably became normal for him.
If
But
if I met any kid talking that way, I probably would have made fun of them on the playground because it just
yeah,
doesn't sound natural to me.
and so there were probably some people like that was actually how they ended up speaking normally, but there were definitely people. There was probably some code switching going on where maybe some New Yorkers, right? They talk more like Trump in one room, and then they go into like
Code switching.
maybe maybe in front of their parents, right? They would speak in the accent that their parents expected them to speak, like like dignified, making the family name look good. A
Yep,
lot of that socialite stuff.
that's what code switching is.
Whereas Trump was
What?
never about that, right?
Someone should make a movie about like a teenager that somehow ends up with the transatlantic accent, and
That
he's
would
the
be a
only one
funny
that
fucking
speaks it.
movie. That would. Well, isn't that something that is said to happen with autistic people sometimes? Is they will
Maybe
adopt
there is an
accents,
autistic accent that people try to identify.
but sometimes
I've read
like
about
autistic
something called the
people,
autistic accent.
like I think sometimes autistic people will also pick up certain regional accents or dialects that may not be their own, but somehow they pick it up. Like it's just something that they learn. I've heard that's a thing sometimes.
It has something to do like with over formality. Like they try really hard to, because they're so rigid and precise about things.
Yeah, so maybe a high functioning autistic person speaking with a teenager was speaking with a transatlantic accent. That would be great.
Like he watched too many. F.
Yeah, maybe he listened to those like
He
history
grew
books
up
too much. He was a history
watching.
nerd.
He that was his special interest, and he ended up with the accent.
Yeah, so then we're playing Monopoly. He's in our stream. He's like, so I propose a trade. I would like to get the orange Monopoly. You have the other card that I need. And I believe that if we trade, we will reach a mutual agreement to our benefit.
See, I'm already laughing. I'll tell you, I think we have a hit on our hands. You gave me 10 seconds of it. I'm already rolling in the aisles.
Imagine if that's how Leggy sounded instead of the way he normally sounds, right?
I don't know where Leggy got his accent from. He makes me feel really good about being a Cajun.
Yeah, Leggy. It's this really like I didn't recognize it at first, but apparently it's like a Maine thing. It's
It
just
is rural Maine.
they sound like something else, I tell you. Um,
I love
what
it.
you know what I think is funny about Bernie Sanders is he's like Trump, and he keeps like his streets in New York accent, but he's the senator of Vermont, but he doesn't hide how he sounds,
Oh yeah.
you know. In fact, they both
Yeah, I
kind
don't
of
know
have
why.
this
I don't
very
know why anybody would. When I first got up here, I was at Starbucks, and there was this little barista who had just moved here from Oklahoma. Real
Mhm,
sweet little friendly girl. I could tell she
mhm.
wasn't from Seattle, and she was so proud of herself because she was losing her Oklahoma accent. And I just it broke my heart to hear her say that. I'm like, why would you think that's a good thing to lose your beautiful regional accent just to assimilate to the culture up here? But she saw it as a good thing. She was so proud she was losing her accent.
Maybe maybe she scores high on the neuroticism scale, who knows. But one thing I would do is back when I was still going to Starbucks, there was this barista there, and I noticed a bit of a southern draw. And so I'm like, "Oh, you got a nice southern accent." And I'm like, "I'm glad you're not hiding it." And she's like, "Well, I try to." And I'm like, "We won't do that. You're still in the South. Like just because you came into Chapel
Oh,
Hill,
she's trying to like that's virtue. She's trying to signal her liberal
people,
cred.
yeah, people in Chapel Hill, they it's you're in North Carolina still, but you people hide it. Now me, I don't sound Southern. I think a large part because my mother did not want me to sound that way because she's from the West Coast.
So you didn't grow
She,
up with that accent in your home.
so my father's a Southerner.
Oh,
His isn't like a real thick like a thing. But I mean, he still has, it's still part of how he speaks. But my mother did not like us sounding Southern. So she didn't let us say things like ain't or whatever. And she would like tell us we sounded ignorant if we sounded too country or whatever. You know, there's a reason I don't speak to my mother anymore, Jeff. She is a stick in the mud. She
okay.
would always see problems. Like I said, when she would come home, she had a bad day at work and take it out on her family. Whereas my father's like, "Oh, I'm so glad I'm not at my lousy job anymore. Oh, my wonderful family, I'm so happy." It's attitude, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so the ironic thing is like I can't go back and change the process of me learning how to speak, right? So she has had this permanent impact on me in that I don't sound like a Southerner,
So this is your
even though,
natural speaking. If we woke you up in the middle of the night, this is how you would speak.
yeah, it's not like if you liquored me up, I would, suddenly start talking the way I normally talk, which is Southern, right? That's not the way I normally
This
talk.
is the you.
I was, you know, um, permanently influenced in this way, and I could not be made to sound. And some people in your audience have said I have this very articulate way of talking,
Yeah, you do.
and
Especially in
again,
for the panel verse.
yes, and so that's how I learned to talk. It's because I had a very judgmental mother. Um, and so I made a point of trying to sound good because I thought that was good too. But actually, what ended up happening is that I made myself look like a fool. So here we are.
I don't think so. But you're pretty good at doing other accents too. So
Oh yeah, I can do imitations, I guess.
yeah.
I'll have to prepare my Jeff impression.
Oh God. Please
Yeah.
don't.
The problem is that it would be tough because I can't just if it's a really good impression, I can't just do the voice. I have to do all the movements and stuff,
Oh my God.
and then
Like pretend like you were on Saturday Night Live.
yeah, basically that's it would be like that, right? It's like when you do a Trump accent, you can't do the Trump accent or Trump voice and not do the hands, right? It's like boo bucket, a daddy. He died crying like a dog. He whimpered. And that's I love the way he says dog. It's like in Springfield, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating they're eating the pets of the people there.
Do say do pronounce Kamala. Do Trump pronounce it Kamala.
It's like thank you all for being here. It's a very, very tight race. We're up against Kamala. We all know what will happen when she's in the White House because she's already in the White House. She's telling us she's going to fix these problems. She's already there. We know who's really running the country. It's not Joe. Where's our president? Huh? Where's our president? Well, we know where he is. He's asleep. And Kamala running the show. Her and all of her deep state fundraisers and donors, but not me. So yeah, that's kind of how he talks. And here's the thing. This is why I said her name is important to her branding, because I've noticed that there are some people who call her Kamala. Then there's Kamala, and for a while I thought that's how her name was. And then there's some people who say Kamala, like almost like
Camel.
camera. Yeah, and some people, like, they just look at her name and they see Kam and they think Kamala, right? And I think what it would have helped her is if very early she just gone by Cam and
She
just
doesn't
done that.
seem like a Cam though. There's
Well, here's the thing: to be a
dissonance.
well, she doesn't seem like a Cam because she also seems like a stick in the mud, right? You got to be cool with that, right? It's like is saying, like, I'm going to be Valerie and you have to pronounce the full Valerie every time, or you can call me Val, right? Or it's like me, I could be Joseph all the time, but I'm Joe, right?
Cam Harris. It just I don't know.
Well, she got um. Oh wait, did she? No, that's her parents' name. She. Oh my! I just realized she did not change her last name when she got married. Oh well. Um. But yeah, it's um Cam is better than Kamala because it's just Trump can mispronounce it in a way just to make her sound unrelatable, right? That's what you do. That's like a thing in a politician's name
Yeah,
is you try to make them sound weird with their
yeah.
name.
That's
And
like
so they
that's
tried to do it
exactly
with
why they do it. Kamala.
Trump. Remember John Oliver did the whole "make Trump Drumpf" again because his ancestors back in like the 1500s were, one of the spellings was Drumpf because there was not a standard German spelling for names at that time yet. Um,
If
and
she
so
really wanted to be relatable, she could be Cam Cam.
exactly, and so um, him doing Kamala is just emphasizing how, even though he knows it's not the right way to say,
Yeah.
I
Oh, I
actually heard
know.
him say her name correctly in
Ever.
the podcast. No, he said Kamala one time in talking to Joe Rogan,
Oh, he did.
but he wasn't in asshole mode because he was just chatting with Rogan. So I think that's why he intentionally does it to make her seem less relatable. And here's another theory: I think he's doing the Allah way to make it associated almost like with Islam, kind of like
Yeah.
with Obama. Obama sounds like Osama, and then what would Republicans often do with Obama? They would say his full name. They'd say Barack Hussein Obama, and they would always emphasize the Hussein part. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And if you'd see people online write it, they would write the Hussein in all caps. I saw that too a lot. And I think he's kind of doing a similar thing there. He's trying to draw on similar prejudices, if we're being frank.
I think it's going to come down to vibes and gender. I
That's what
think.
all the elections come down to.
Yeah, but we haven't always had female candidates before either. But I think
True.
the women are vibing on Kamala because they're picking up on all this subtle stuff that the men are just not going to respond to. But for some reason, she's like this big hero to women vibe wise. She knows how to like trigger their vibes, and I think the men are just going to find Trump more relatable than she
Yeah, I
is.
think. Well, I mean, you look on Joe Rogan, right? He's a very relatable dude on there.
I
And
mean,
what's
who would you
crazy
want
is
as a fifth grade teacher, Kamala or Trump? You'd want to be in Trump's class. That's the class you're gonna have the most fun in. You're gonna get to be yourself.
exactly. He's like, all right, we're going to be mixing chemicals today. Chemicals are these things. They're made of atoms. You put them together, they make molecules. All right, we're going to do great things with the atoms that we have. And then Kamala would be like, okay, guys, we're here today. We're gonna do some chemistry. It's just she'd be really like fucking awkward and dorky about it.
She's so. I find her so. What she doesn't. I don't hear confidence in her, and I don't hear substance. I hear whininess, and she just kind of tries to go with the vibe. It's not. She's not. It's not conscious or intellectual.
Yeah, well, the thing about Kamala is she seems like a really nervous person. Like
Yes. Yes. The
she's like ready
nervousness.
for
Yes.
she's ready for the rug to be pulled from under her feet. And at least with Hillary seemed like she was ready to be in charge. he didn't seem like he was afraid to do that.
Yeah. I
And
just
I
didn't
think
like
it's like,
her shrewish personality.
yeah, but when Hillary is an observably stronger candidate than Kamala, I'm just saying, let's not speak well for Kamala.
Right, and he lost. Hillary's the one that lost to him
He's
the first time.
it's
So
just
they ran someone worse than her to try to
yeah.
save democracy the second time.
hmm Yeah, it's just this is why. Oh, did you see the prediction map that I posted in your
Yeah,
politics
how
channel?
confident are you in that? Because I still think she's going to win.
I'm
Because I think
90.
women are going to vibe on her, and they're going to get all the soy men to support them in that vote. But I think
I
women
think
are going to drive this election with the men,
I
with their male allies.
I think I'm 95% confident of it, and the
Ah,
5% where I'm not confident is just in maybe certain states. But
here, let
I
me
do
pull
think
it up.
Trump.
You put it in
I think Trump.
politics.
I did. I think Trump wins it. I think Trump wins it.
Okay, this is Joe's prediction map.
Yeah, we can see what the comments or chat thinks about it. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. So I'm thinking Georgia stays blue because I think with the amount of urbanization in the Atlanta area and the strong black vote there, it can tilt blue. And
But
I
aren't
think
some of the blacks breaking for Trump now too?
some are, but I really think in Georgia it's a voter turnout thing. If they just get them out to vote, that they come out ahead.
It seemed like you were more confident about North Carolina when we talked.
Yeah, North Carolina is going to Trump. It's just Hillary couldn't win it. Biden couldn't win it. No way Kamala is
They
winning
say it's
this.
going to
No
come
way.
down to young men, like getting them to vote. That they're not a block that comes out and votes often in numbers. And if we could get them to vote, that could swing it.
Yeah, and I think the only reason the Rust Belt state was lost to Trump, well, Trump didn't win it the second time, is because he was up against Joe Biden, and they felt maybe a bit better about him,
Hmm.
more the like union worker swing voters. But if you've seen the data, the unions feel a lot better about Trump, especially with Vance as his running mate this time.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think Michigan tends to lean a bit bluer, so I'm actually saying the Democrats could still win that one. But I think Pennsylvania goes red. I think Wisconsin goes red. And Ohio, of course, because of Vance. Arizona, um, I'm a little more iffy on that, but I think
I
it's more
saw I
likely
saw
to.
something on Twitter, some polling in Arizona that it's the counties that it comes down to seem to be breaking for Trump in early voting.
Yeah, so I think that's like this is my state by state thing. I think the overall result is Trump has this, especially because Kamala was polling better in like early September, but as time passed, things just started looking worse for her in the polls. Um, and
And we haven't seen the effects of that interview either.
yeah, and I don't see how she salvages her image, like especially because Trump crushed Biden in that debate, and then he survives the assassination attempt, and it looks strong. It's just he's
And
had
then he works the McDonald fry station, and then he goes on Joe Rogan.
yeah, and it just he's really good at like sticking in people's heads.
Yeah, and she went on a Beyonce concert, and Bill
Yeah,
Maher.
and she showed up, and she's also showing up to this slate. Like Trump has been campaigning for a long time now, and she is a bucket of water on a fire, right? Because this was Biden's race initially. Um, so like she wasn't ready for this, and I think this shows. And that might be a big part of why she's so nervous. Is she was not ready for this. She maybe thought she was going to have another um term before she would run.
Maybe she needs to win and give them 4 years to really fuck it up, and people will finally start to see. Maybe enough people haven't seen what I see yet, and it
And I
takes
don't think swing voters care about Trump's convictions. That's the only thing I see maybe weighing him down. I don't think swing voters care
care about what?
his felony convictions.
No, I don't think they care about January 6th either.
I think the only people who care about that stuff are people who already don't like Trump, and most people see it as politically motivated. Whether or not that's true, Like I'm not weighing in on whether or not the like I did say before that some of the convictions really seem dubious to me, but at the same time, jury is allowed to make their call. But I don't think the swing voters really see it that way. I think they see it as like cases that were brought against him because he was running again, and they wouldn't have brought it against him if he didn't run again.
This is from MSN, and it does appear that there are roughly 2,500 voter registration forms that were flagged for potential fraud, and it looks like it's in Lancaster County. And they said they've contained it, and they're investigating. They had either false names, duplicative handwriting, unverifiable or incorrect identifying information. Good, I'm glad they're catching it early. That should make you more confident in our elections. But they are being investigated for possible fraud. 2,500 voters. Washington Post saying the same thing. So is CNN. Nuns, Pennsylvania nuns. What are the nuns doing?
Like Catholic nuns?
53 voters registered at the address, the site of a Catholic church, but not a single one actually living there. But there were voters, dozens of voters, 55 hard-to-miss nuns of the Benedictine Sisters of Erie. Why would the nuns be voting for Kamala? Are they trying to rig it for Trump? Evidence for concerns, however, remains as thin as it was in the 2020 election. So this nun thing is a separate story from those 2,500 registrations, which does appear to be legit. It says, I guess there's only a couple of counties in Pennsylvania that are the actual swing counties. This is one of them. But I'm still not understanding what the controversy is. Conspiracy theories lay the groundwork for post-election challenges. High volume of mail-in and absentee voting in key swing states like North Carolina, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada. So there's a lot of early voting coming in. That's suspicious.
Yeah, so suspicious. Who are these people voting early? How could they possibly care that much? What do they want?
It's 53 people registered at one address, and they're saying it's nuns. Lancaster by page, but they won't release. Oh, so these are canvassers that go out and sign people up to vote, and then they turned in these forms, and like 2,500 of them are suspicious. Interesting.
I remember I used to do that. I used to go around and gather voter registration forms so we could turn them in to the Board of Elections.
And were there ways to falsify them if you wanted to?
I mean, maybe because they're forms you fill out with a pen. I mean, in theory,
so somebody could sit there and fake a whole bunch of them and try to turn those in.
Yeah, I suspect some, because like there are a lot of places that just have them out, right? Like libraries have them, DMVs have them. Right, you can get them in a lot of places, and you can just take a stack, and if you wanted, I guess you could falsify them.
I still got my ballot here. I'm going to vote online this week. I want to ask you about that stock thing. Like currently there's that excise tax on $250,000 of profits. And they want to repeal it so that there's no excise tax. Does that sound like a good thing to you or not? Or should they keep the tax?
This is Washington State, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it. So you said it's a tax on the capital gains, right?
On stock profits over
Okay.
2,500. If you try to transfer them or sell them or something like that.
Okay. So
Because
like
there's currently
realized
no
gain.
income tax here, and they're always trying to find a way to like do an in run around no income
And
tax.
if they need a source of funds for their budget and they make sure they're breaking even, it's not a bad thing to try. It could discourage people from
Because
um
the tax is currently in place. This is a vote to repeal the tax and get rid of it.
okay. Oh, to get rid of it.
Yeah,
The only potential advantage I could see is that people might feel better about doing business in Washington. Now, from what I can tell, like I think about this, I know that Microsoft has a major headquarters in Seattle, and there's a lot of employees there. I'm pretty sure they're getting stock-based compensation, so that could potentially affect them. But it doesn't seem to be like it's obviously not. Doesn't seem to be too much of a
I would
deterrent
love to
for
get rid
Microsoft.
of as many Microsofties as possible. If it has a chance of driving out Microsofties, I might vote for it.
Do they cramp the style over there in
I
Seattle?
just hate my ex was one of those people. He was high up in Microsoft,
Well,
and
the
I can't
the ex
stand
that
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 culture. I
the
cannot.
ex that like
It's the Borg. The corporate culture at Microsoft is so toxic, and it sets the model for all the other corporations and even the state bureaucracy.
okay, and this is the ex that when you reference traumatic experiences, it's that ex.
Yeah, the psychopath, the one I
Okay,
moved up here for.
gotcha. I could see why that'd be especially annoying then. Um,
But I also want to do the fair and the right thing, and not let my personal bias. Um, See, that's me having the emotion, but still being able to make a rational decision.
there you go. Um, so yeah, I mean that's generally the concern there is like if businesses have to pay more tax or investors have to pay more tax, and businesses and investors are essentially the same type of person. You might
And the
drive them out of
fear
your
is
state.
that this is going to be the stepping stone to a statewide income tax. Because if they remove this excise tax, then they can make an argument for, well, now we need an income tax.
One of the benefits potentially of an excise tax is it can, because the excise tax is the sales tax, and then by shifting it to investors, they can maybe you might see it as like a progressive tax system in which the ordinary consumer has to contribute less. They get lower prices, maybe a little um, relaxation on the inflation they're feeling for consumer goods, and then it'd probably be more rich people paying that tax because most people, as we've talked about before, don't own stock.
They said 98.8% of people will not pay the tax. So it's only going to be 0.2% of people that's going to end up paying
So
it.
yeah,
And
it,
it's
it
on
could be
stock
beneficial
sale
in that way.
profits.
Yeah, and if consumers are better off and they can be better off, that might be better for business in a sense. So there's some give and take to it. I would err on the side of what's good for the individual consumer is probably good for the
It says they
Washington
risk
state
driving
economy.
family wage jobs and job creators out of Washington as they relocate to states with lower taxes.
Right. So it depends. Let me think. Does Washington what's the I guess some of it might depend on what's the major like economic drivers in Washington. Like with Microsoft, for example, like is it very high skill and tech oriented, or do they have something like specific to their state that is a source of income and wealth creation?
It's
Ugh.
mostly tech. It's mostly big tech. It's like a miniature Silicon Valley. And then
There
they
you
have
go.
Boeing.
So there could be some risk with driving out the businesses, but again, I would think that Seattle isn't necessarily like, or Washington isn't necessarily the cheapest place for big tech to work. I mean, like I'm surprised more businesses aren't like doing their stuff in Texas. Texas is probably going to be one of the most accommodating states to businesses, except for the fact that um, a lot of tech companies have a culturally liberal bias and they don't want to go to conservative places. They won't have to deal with Republican lawmakers, right?
They
So,
go to
um,
Austin.
right. But even then, it's like statewide law. Like Austin would be
Yeah.
subject to that. So I don't think Austin can say use whatever bathrooms you want, and the Texas state government will be like, oh yeah, we're fine with that. No fucking way. Because they didn't do that here in North Carolina. Um, and so it could be the thing is like if there's a liberal premium that the tax collectors in those liberal states can collect, they might be able to get away with charging it.
Oh, and actually, this tax was passed in 2021, so it's only been 3 years,
Hmm.
and they want to
Interesting.
already get rid of it.
How about that? How about that? People changing their damn minds.
And it
Just
will
like the
result in
prohibition.
a revenue loss of 2.2 billion over 5 state fiscal years.
That seems like a lot for Washington.
But hey, Untrackable. It's tempting to get the tech people out of here, though. Those are all people I don't like, and they're the woke people.
That's right. Yeah, Dark Jeff wants to get them out.
I do. I will do anything to get the DEI out of here.
He'll do
Let's see. It's an
anything.
indirect tax paid by and eventually paid by the consumer via price increase. Because it's on the sale of stock profit. So if I make a profit from selling stock over $250,000, that's what the tax would be on. And that's it. It seems like that's the only thing that is in question.
Should be fun to see what happens there. I mean, so have you voted yet? Do they have early voting in Washington? Oh, that's your ballot. Okay, so you're going to mail that in.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna do it on stream so people can see what mail-in voting looks like and how secure it is. See, they got the little barcode. They track everything.
Okay.
They have the barcode here with my unique ID on it. I have
So
to
how do you feel?
sign. They check the signature of every single ballot that comes in against your voter registration, just like a bank would check a check signature.
So how do you feel about that? Like, what's your inclination? Do you know if
Oh,
you're
I
going to
love
vote
it.
for it?
I
Okay.
don't ever want to go back to in-person voting.
Oh, I meant for the tax thing.
I don't know enough.
Hmm. Well, you don't necessarily
It's
have to fill that one in anyway.
hey,
Hey, Untrackable.
untrackable. I'm
Hey
gonna
everybody.
vote the way that it plays into my personal goals. So if I can use it strategically to alter the culture here, if there's a way to that this will impact, I will probably vote that way.
I love using my vote to change reality.
Yeah. And then there's a couple of votes about they're trying to get rid of natural gas and force everybody to go to electric and try to ban like phase out and ban natural gas. And I'm
Wow.
inclined to vote no on that and keep natural gas. And then there's one on carbon emissions too.
It is crazy trying to do that with natural gas. Like,
This is
I
a
don't
very
know how you can
green
do that.
state. They pride themselves on their environmentalism,
Of course. Of course. Why wouldn't
which
they?
we do have. I mean, it's pretty clean air and water here. I gotta say. What's up tonight, Untrackable?
Oh, doing good. Just was barely coming in, so I haven't heard too much, but you know, I saw your title and decided to come up in the chat.
Oh yeah, we've been talking about emotions all day. Joe and Dobez and I had a
Yep.
conversation earlier, and so
Yeah.
it was and Shameless was in the chat. It turns out she's German, and so she had a lot to say. She was kind of saying similar to you and Dobez about.
Well, I didn't see what she was saying because I didn't have the window up. I would have liked to have seen
And
that.
so part of it was like me hoping that she would be here to get in on the conversation. But I never tire of talking about it, so I can always bring it up again.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I
It
mean,
was. It was.
you guys were also on another conversation, so we don't have to go back.
Oh no, look, we just chat. We talk about whatever you want. You're the newcomer, so if you have what's on your mind?
Uh, I'm enjoying my Saturday evening, my Saturday night. Don't have to work
Ah,
tomorrow.
what you doing tonight?
Oh, just chilling,
Chilling.
talking to y'all.
Ah, did you? Were there any other panels tonight that were
Yeah. Um,
noteworthy?
I was only on one. I was on there for quite a bit. And they only do an open panel on Saturday night. And it's like a cool place. They do, like the men's health talks. They
Oh,
call it like Men's Health Monday. And then,
which one is that?
oh man, I'm
Is it
I'm
Male
gonna have,
Pandora
no, I've heard of that one, but I've never, I've looked
or
at
is
it,
it
but I've like haven't been there.
Just Us, Chris? Yeah, I'm interested in finding more mental health channels. So if you can remember it, I would love to check it out.
But they do like non-panel shows throughout the week. Sometimes they interview people. Sometimes they do movie reviews. Like they have their whole week planned out. But it's a chill, free kind of place to talk. Sometimes, just meet new people and then go talk to people you've talked to before, and maybe you have lessons.
Is it Glenn Lawrence?
No,
Oh,
uh, I I don't think I've heard of that one either.
I know
Uh,
he does
I
something men's
it's
related.
definitely a smaller uh, platform. Like,
Oh,
Bless you. That was the most dainty sneeze.
let me see if I can go to where I was.
Yeah, I need to network with more mental health channels. I'm trying to there's some options here in Washington State, some local options. I'm trying to explore too that might feed
All
into what
right,
I'm doing here on this channel.
I'll tell you because I trust you, because we've been talking for a
Or
while.
you can put it
I
in the
don't.
back if you want.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna do that, but
Okay.
it's just like I do my best to avoid any drama. But like if you check it out, I don't think you'll be disappointed at all. But they do their thing, and it's fun. So
Don't
yeah,
send
I'll
the
put it
drama
in the.
over.
No, I don't think you would send anything. It's just you talk to me, but at the same time I go over there. So it's I don't know. I tend to wipe my feet at the door, and that's why I don't normally do this kind of stuff. You
Okay.
know what I
You might that might be wise in the panelverse.
mean? Yeah.
yeah, probably.
Hopefully I spell it right.
And I normally don't go on strange panels anyway. I have bad experiences. There's very few panels I feel comfortable going on. I like Blizzy sometimes, Moose I will go on. That's about it.
So many bad experiences.
Joe, I would probably go on Joe's.
Now it's not a link, but I think that's what it's called.
Oh, okay. No, I've not heard of this one, so I will check it out.
Yeah, it's chill dudes. They're right now. The movie reviews that they're doing are like kind of off the radar, like horror movies. Halloween time, I guess.
Speaking of, we need to do something for Halloween. Like I want to have some kind of Halloween party or something. But the whole panelverse is probably going to be trying to do it. So if we can think of something really fun and creative, we can do like an all-day Halloween stream. We could have costume contests where people show up with different avatars, maybe voice changers. We have
That'd
to
be fun.
figure out who they are. We won't know. Of course, it's a chance for the trolls to sneak in the back too.
They could.
I don't
You
know
know
if
they
this
would.
is something brought up before, or if it's something that I was hearing on another place. But when you do that, like, if you want a turnout, like you have to pick a date, and there's really only like 4 days left, 5 days left,
Right. It's on
and you
Thursday.
don't want to do
Let's.
it on Halloween. One, because it's
Oh,
a weeknight, I guess, but also two, because you know anybody that's with their child that might be taking them out, or people that actually party on Halloween
nobody in the
are going
panelverse has lives. They're gonna
to.
all be here on Halloween. I promise.
That's all right.
Looking for something to do.
I
No, I
I
got.
might have a life soon, Jeff.
Oh, you getting some hits?
Um, well, I was sort of referencing more. I had a match on eHarmony not long ago, and um, we're gonna be planning a date pretty soon. So we'll see how about
Oh,
that.
see all connected.
Yeah, um she's on vacation in Florida though, so we just have to wait for her to get back. So we'll see. But that's like it was been a long time since I matched on a dating app.
It must be hard dating for straight guys dating in the modern world with all the feminism.
Yeah, that doesn't help. It definitely does not help.
I mean, I would say dating period is tough. It's just one of those things where, you know, I guess you could start by getting over yourself, but then you hope, but no, and not directed, but just in general, getting over yourself, and hopefully you find somebody that has gotten over themselves, and then you can start talking about goals. Because some of that stuff of like some stereotypical breakdowns, it's like, oh my God, if this person had just learned this lesson, you know,
Yeah, I know what you
that's
mean.
just how, I feel about in a
That's so
snapshot.
hard
Yeah.
to, because you always start out thinking you found that until the baggage doesn't come out till
Oh yeah.
a few weeks in, and then you really don't know someone till you move in with them. That's where the true test is.
Yeah. It's
Hey,
it's a
Dom.
distance for, I guess. But it will never not be tough. And even after you find the one, it's gonna be tough. And even after you say it in front of whoever you say it in front of, it's gonna be tough. Toughness never relents.
If if I mean I don't have a lot. I've had very few long term relationships, but the really good one I had that I would say was very healthy and worked out well. It was doing it with the right person. Like the person you're doing with is so important. Like finding that compatibility.
Yeah.
Kane, do you feel like, do you have an itch or feel any kind of desire? Or you're kind of like me. I've been single for the past over 15 years. And I'm fine just letting it come to me. Like I'm not, it's nice when you have it, but I'm not motivated to go disrupt my life to find it. Yeah. Same here, and quickly. I mean, I have it doesn't take me long. It like 1 or 2 or 3 dates max is all I need to tell if it's going to be have long term potential or not. I've always said we need panelverse that like there's got to be potential for some kind of panelverse dating if this gets big enough. And my hope is after that Joe Rogan interview, the rest of the world discovers this little world we have going on YouTube. The more people that can transition from television to interactive media,
Yeah.
the more we
And
grow.
I want to say something too, like you said, like the panel verse maybe being an opportunity for kind of the dating verse rather than just having an app with your whatever you typed in as your description, like, hey, let's meet, let's talk, let's show each other's faces and stuff like that. uh it's a bit more intimate, a bit more honest, things you can't hide, you know. um but at the same time, just like on the apps, just like on the YouTube, just like back in the day when we were in the chat rooms, there's gonna be trolls, and somebody's gonna come up here and they might show their real face, and they might talk all sweet, but oh hey, let's set up that date, and then it was like,
Just to fuck with someone? That's so
or
easy.
or just or they'll do it right here on the thing just to waste your time.
Does anyone know of any panelverse couples that have formed from being on meeting on YouTube? I don't know of any that I could think of. I mean, I
I've
know
heard
of
of
couples
people
that come
getting
here, but I don't know if they
together.
met on YouTube.
I've heard of people throughout the people with channels that they met because they're both running channels and whatnot, and then they got together business wise, and then maybe they got together in the real world, and then it didn't work out, and then hey, that started a whole narrative for drama channel. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
right, because it would spill over into the panelverse.
Yeah,
I know Kendra does live speed dating, but it's like you just go on by yourself and you give your pitch, and then the audience can
yeah,
email her, I guess, and say, "Oh, I'm interested in that person." But it's not like you don't get to see the people meet face to face live.
yeah. But then again, just like letting somebody up on panel, it's like okay. Um, Say what you need to say to the judges or whatever, and then they just flip that troll switch and go berserk with their language, and they were never serious until they drop off or get kicked. And it's like
That
there's
troll
always going to be
switch,
that the troll switch. It will never
it
not
brings it out of
exist.
people because I think we all have one.
Uh,
Even me.
yeah,
Yeah, I think you
I,
definitely do. I've seen it, mostly in the chat, but I've seen it.
I do believe I have one.
And but the one thing I think about communities like this, that's why I'm trying to find similar communities to collaborate with, is there's kind of a gatekeeping or a filter element where the community can help vet the healthy people from the trolls. And so if you have a community that filters out enough people to form a dating pool, or filters in enough people to form a dating pool, then you could start something like panel dating.
Possible.
I'm thinking long term because I'm planning for growth, not just my channel growth, but I'm planning for this medium to grow. Just like
Yeah.
Facebook grew and Twitter grew, I'm planning for this to be the next big thing. So a lot of my ideas are for when that happens.
Well, because imagine if it was like this, where okay, as it is right now, like you have your channel. If somebody else has their channel, they can restream your channel or whatever. But if you're gonna be especially when they keep going up in price, like what if they up the people of your channel to like? Because I think the max now that I've seen is 10. What if they max it out at 20, but then you can control how many people are up to maybe 4 other separate rooms?
I wish they had breakout rooms like Zoom does. That would solve a lot of problems. Actually, StreamYard you can upgrade to the expensive plan and get more people. I think
More
25
than more
people or
than
something like that. But
oh wow,
that's
I didn't
I
know.
almost I find panels with even 9 people on them difficult to manage. That's about the limit.
Right.
And it's
But
about the limit of what the audience could pay attention to.
that's why that break off room, just the way you said it, because it's like okay, we're all here for this kind of same meeting, especially if you have like a time consistency channel, um, and you've got people that come in there for the same purpose. And maybe have some other enhancements for vetting, I guess you could say, because it's cool the way it's done now, but at the same time, I think there StreamYard needs to help work on
They
another
do
way.
provide a green room, but it's in the back. It's backstage. I wonder if there's a way to simulate breakout rooms by having multiple channels stream at the same time, and like each channel offers a slightly different form of content that people can. Like you have one main channel, which is this is how we did it on Zoom. We had a lobby, the main Zoom. When you come in, you're in a lobby, and it's kind of like open panel. But then they had breakout rooms with different activities happening in each one that the people can filter into from the lobby. And so having like an open panel, but additional channels streaming other types of content that we could send people to from the main open panel and have them somehow all be aggregated somewhere on a website or YouTube as like one community brand.
So
Hmm.
like if like let's say I came into your channel and I went into the big lobby and you can say like you said have what 25 and you can have 5 subrooms, which means up to 5 people can go into those subrooms at any time, but you get to dictate like just like you said topic emotion room number 1,
Yeah.
topic bullying
Stocks,
rule
room number
number 2.
two. If you're
Yeah,
interested in finance, Joe's in room number two. And then but somehow have a way to show the content of all of those rooms where people the viewers themselves can choose, like have a little menu like these are our breakout rooms for the day. Joe's going to be talking about stocks. I'm going to be talking about emotions. Moose is going to be playing games. And then the viewers can pick what they want, like security cameras. You have an array of content
it
going on at the
it could
same time, and the
become
viewers could pick which ones they want to go to, and they could switch back and forth.
it could be it could become so much separate then or so much more a part of like the YouTube or whoever'd be willing to because when these things happen like mergers happen, either StreamYard can go extreme and kind of do what we're talking about, or YouTube or somebody could buy them and do the same thing but still have it connected to your you know account, like for viewing and subscriptions and stuff like that, rather than just finding you and just be StreamYarding you.
Yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to get. I'm interested in the potential. I want to get creative, and figure out how to exploit this potential. Like break things if we have to, so that we can figure out what the limitations of this medium is, and push it, and see what's possible with it.
Yeah, I think
But it
that's
would
really cool.
take that commitment and consistency that Joe and I talked about the other day too. We'd have to have enough channel owners that had that kind of conscientiousness to pull it off. That order, that German. That's where we need the German spirit, that Protestant work ethic.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Even though me, the Cajun, seems to be one of the people doing it the most right now.
Because even
The
the
Cajun
people that are
work ethic is what's keeping this stream going. By the way, I want y'all to know. So Protestants
because
take that.
even the people that are out of order that are more likely to be your participants, they have a clock too. But if you are the rock, if you are the alarm, um, people will know when to show up and
Yeah, that's that
like
one reason
you're
Joe and I are doing those 2 weekly
already
streams
doing it.
is
Yeah,
to
and
provide
you're
that
already doing it.
stability.
Yeah, like I said, you're already doing it pretty
Because
much.
it would only take Joe and I are trying to find 4 or 5 or 6. It would only take a small core of people with those superpowers, and then the rest of the people could orbit our platform off of that. But we would have the stability and consistency to create a foundation for the Nexus, and then the other people that come and do their thing could come and do it. Like it wouldn't have to be as intense as this core group is doing. We would be like the engine that kept it going, and then that would benefit other people that had less time or interest to invest, but they could still participate at their level. It's just finding those people. That's what I've been struggling with since I started this.
Yeah. Folks good people are hard to find.
And
You
then
don't find them
I've
easily.
found some in the past, like during COVID and stuff, but then life happens too. Like everybody has lives. Not everybody can live on YouTube like I can.
Hmm.
So it's finding the people with those qualities and also the lifestyle that would allow it
Mhm.
to be something permanent.
Yeah. Again, we've talked about that before, like commitment, and it's hard to find that enthusiastic person that has already been living a matching time schedule to meet those commitments. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. I wish I could just clone myself. If I had 5 Jeffs, I could do something really
Yeah.
amazing here. Um,
You ever watch that movie Multiplicity
with
with
Bill, was it Bill Murray?
no, it was
Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton, yes. And but each time so he's him, but then he clones himself because he thinks it'll give it more time to like
Yeah,
spend with his wife and stuff like that.
it just
But
spins off
it,
more drama.
it spins off individual pieces of his personality. So it's like you get the super masculine, you get the super feminine, and then you get the child.
So it's
You
not a
you
pure clone. It's not an exact clone.
no, it ripped it copied one emotion after another, and so now you have this like strong talking dude, which is him when he has to stand up for himself, and then you've got the feminine side, which is you know maybe him when he's like understanding what his wife's going through, and then you've got the childish side, which is where we all come from. We do things so innocently and unknowingly, and then in the end, his personalities go and drive off in a car like, yeah, we'll take care of ourselves like a family.
Maybe I could watch it in the Discord.
There's a
I
good
only
movie.
saw it when it came out. Let's
Yeah,
see
I
what
think I
year
only
was that?
saw it once, but it definitely left a mark.
1996. Because it's archetype. It's like splitting off his different archetypes. It's parts work.
Yeah, it's a good one. And for the most part, it was meant to be funny. It's not like it's some
Yeah, I
deep
think I
ass.
might watch it tomorrow or the next few days. We could even do some spooky Halloween movies leading up to Halloween. Well, do you think things are winding down? Let me check in on the news. Israel hit Iran. Oh, Israel's still going after Iran.
I gotta say, I
Michelle
haven't been.
Obama is campaigning, trying to scare people about Trump. That's what their campaign is. Every time they hit the campaign trail, it's not to talk about their policies, it's to scare people about Trump. Now she's scared, she's hitting the campaign trail to warn women what Trump would mean for their health if they elect him. How scary Trump is. It's fear-based voting.
Honestly, this is a tough one because I don't necessarily think Trump should be president again.
No, but I think
But
Kamala should be president even less. That's what's making the decision for out of the two.
right, right. But
At
at
least
the
he's
same,
done it for 4 years, and I'm not confident in her ability. She does not inspire confidence.
but this is what's perplexing to me is that ever since, like, he was just this, it was almost like a Americana type
Yeah,
of personality
yeah.
until he decided to run for president, and it has been Trump, 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 Trump. Okay, Trump's president. It's controversy. Trump, 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 Trump. Okay, Trump's not president. Trump, 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 Trump. Okay, Trump's running for president again. Trump, 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 Trump. It doesn't matter if he wins or loses. I think the next 4 years is still going to be Trump, 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 and
I hope it
it's
is. If he loses, I hope he makes it Trump for 4. I hope he does not ride off into the sunset. I hope he sticks in there for 4 years as a thorn and a
I
troll.
just And I've said the same thing about Joe Biden. Are you okay? Joe Biden's too old. He's proven
Japan.
it. Like I think people should I think people should retire and enjoy the rest of their lives and not like for some unknowing irrational reason run for office when like you could be on your last legs. I don't necessarily think Trump is on his last legs, but I do think he's at that age where that man should just go to his own golf course and shut the fuck up and move on. I'm just saying.
He's too. He needs that spotlight too much. That narcissistic supply.
I just feel like maybe the old people are too good at the game and they keep beating up on the kids. Just let the kids fight amongst themselves and we'll see what happens. I don't know. Maybe that was a bad example, but
That's what they worked for our generation.
I mean, I'm gonna tell you guys the rules and then I'm gonna move on. I call my mom for advice, not for money. I
Does she
call my
give good
mom because
advice?
what's that?
Does she give good advice?
I'll put it this way: she talks to me and she lets me, get out what I have to say and tell her what my plan is, and then sometimes she has a suggestion, and sometimes she goes down a long funny story, and sometimes it's a real quick, and then we can just talk about whatever. You know. But if I thought I was going to call my mom and be like, "Hey, mom, I was very irresponsible, and I need $150," and my mom was like, "Well, I don't have $150." Be like, "Oh, you didn't raise me," Go. I've seen it happen. I'm sorry. I've seen that happen. So,
Where they try to guilt the mom.
but it makes no sense. Like, okay, you were irresponsible. You admitted that you were irresponsible. Now you're asking somebody else who, regardless of their responsibility, is no longer responsible for you. And when they say no, next thing you know, every word that comes out of your mouth, every effort that you're going to give, you're trying to squeeze water out of a rock. You know what I'm saying? Trying to get help from someplace where it is impossible for it to happen.
I spent
Yeah.
most of my childhood fighting for my mom, like my mom's attempt to raise me, so I can't use that as an excuse.
Yeah. And moved out of my parents' house of my own choice, knowing full well the risks. And when I found myself living in my car, I did not ask them for help. I didn't
So
even
you
tell
never
them
went
about it.
back. It wasn't like an
I
attempt, and
I
that
never
was
went
it.
back.
One time.
Yeah, once I was out, I was gone. I was never going back.
I mean, I
I did that a
definitely
few
did.
times, but then I always had that safety net to go back to until I had to move far enough away. When I moved to California and Vegas and up here in Washington State, that was enough distance for me not to make it not worth going back and having to do it on my own. Because knowing that I could have that to fall back on, um, it didn't always take the first few times.
And I think that helps. Well, it's helped me anyway. When I did that leap and I created that distance where it's me against the world, and I look forward to writing a success letter or making a success phone call back to mom. It made me appreciate where I came from and what the purpose was in the first place. And
Hmm.
it's like, oh, it's not just to go out into the world and do things. It's your safety net is going to turn into dust, and you need to make sure you have your own. You have to build your own net. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's part of what this is.
And fundamentally, I just stopped viewing it as, my parents' job to take care of me forever. But eventually, it's like they are not responsible for me anymore. You can't just. You got to look at asking your parents for help as you would any random person, right? You don't just go up to random people and say, "Yo, can you just give me a bunch of free
Well,
shit?"
you get better interest rates on the loans from the Bank of Mama. I found that's one
True.
advantage. But they are
Um,
loans.
yeah. So, yeah, it's I think it's something that I don't know why exactly it is that I felt that way because it wasn't exactly like an expectation they put on me. My twin sister certainly has not been like me in that regard at all.
Maybe it was your
So
drive for autonomy and independence.
could be. There are some things about me where I can't explain, like when we talk about nature or nurture, I don't know what the origin of why some things about
Yeah,
me are the way they are.
that's hard to tease out for anybody. Was this before or after the military?
This was
Okay.
because it's after college and everything, and after it had been a couple years back in my parents' house, and I eventually was like, I need to get the fuck out of here. Um,
Yeah.
and maybe being in the military,
Yeah, I
maybe
mean, you outgrow it at some point.
yeah. And even by college, I was getting to a point where like I could not stand being in my parents' house back like between semesters and during breaks. Did not take long.
Yeah, it's a hell of a motivation when you, you find this life that you want to live, but you still have to endure like the taper off period. You know,
Mm,
like you said, if you go into the service, you're gonna be gone, right?
mhm,
But you'll always come visit. But then when you get out and your transition goes like you said, maybe you go to college, but it's efficient. Uh, it's economic to lean on those who love you, but it's all in an effort to make sure that going back to where you came from isn't the permanent status. Like
Yeah.
mhm.
so something I've thought of is school is a place where you learn, and you should never stay in a school too long. Like you graduate,
Right.
leave,
Yeah.
go out to the world, and that's the way that I kind of look, if in a certain kind of way, at like growing up and being raised, regardless of uh, the staff involved. Uh, this You graduate from this house. Um, your next step is to make sure you don't have to go back to this school again. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Yep. And I haven't. When I left college, that was it. Actually, I went back a few times because I moved out west and then had to leave and come back, and then I lost Mike and I had to come back to kind of stay. But those were like not ordinary circumstances, and they was very temporary. So I had that home base to return to when I needed it, like after a crisis and stuff. But every time I did it, I was trying to fly out of there as quick as possible. Like I did not want to be back there. I wanted to stay there as little as possible and move on to the next thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah, Jeff. Is there anything other than the Spurg stuff? Is there anything that's like specific to your behavior where you're not sure where you got it from?
No, I always assume it's the autism or the being Cajun because they map onto each other so well. So like
Hmm.
sometimes I have like, is the rocking Cajun or is it autistic? I think it's an exaggerated version of a Cajun behavior because if you went to Louisiana, a lot of Cajuns rock and swing and all that stuff. So I think a lot of the autism is just an extension of the cultural stuff. Like that's the form my autism took because that's the culture that I was autistic in when I was
Hmm.
developing. So it's very hard for me to tell what's neurological and what's cultural because I think the culture inhibits and encourages certain traits and not. And so with the autism, I think it just modified the autism in a Cajun way. And if I was autistic growing up in a Protestant culture, the autism would look differently. So no, I do not know. And then you factor in the PTSD. Now I can tell you that a lot of the reactivity and the emotional states are more the result of PTSD because they were much, much more infrequent before that. And then after the
Okay.
PTSD, it was like, before that, it was like maybe once or twice a year, if that. And after the PTSD, it was like 5 or 6 times a week.
Hmm.
But that's because of what PTSD does to your brain, with your amygdala, your hippocampus, your prefrontal cortex, and your threat sensitivity is high. Like the parts, the mechanisms that manage threat sensitivity and the intrusive memories get kind of damaged, and so they don't work the way they did before the PTSD. So a lot of the what people see as this big scary emotions, I think, are more the result of the PTSD. I would have had much less of those before. They're still me, but the frequency and intensity, I think, are more the
It's like you
result of
have
the
these.
PTSD.
It's like you have these panic reflexes inside your head to things that didn't used to set you off.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. It would take a lot to get me worked up before and after the PTSD, any little thing would set it off. Like if somebody said the wrong thing the wrong way, or I just saw something that just didn't, it would just set off. And that's common with PTSD. It's hyperreactivity and threat sensitivity.
Yeah, I almost wonder if that has happened to me because it's so often the case now that I am just expecting a terribly negative reaction from people that never actually comes. But I've had instances in the past where that happened that like I'm just braced for impact so often now.
Like a minor form of, because actual PTSD, it's an
Hmm.
event that's impactful enough to actually change the way your brain works. But there could be like this minor accumulated experiences over time that have a similar effect associated with just those type of experiences. So if you're like constantly rejected in the dating world or the friendship world, that's
Well,
not
it's not just
necessarily
that.
like a
It isn't
life
just
altering trauma, but it could have that cumulative effect on how you
it.
approach it in the future.
It could be some of that, but it's also like I've had some pretty um I've had episodes that were not minor and they were pretty like
Oh,
explosive and
like
um
traumatic, actual
like
trauma.
not nothing like violent, but like things where words were had, like things in the Democratic Party, and they were things like where things got off the rails in large part because of um sometimes related to like the woke stuff and sometimes just people not following through. And so um a lot of what I'm expecting is like I'm just constantly expecting that people are either going to react negatively or they're going to completely like flake out and let something just evaporate in my hands. I'm
Oh, I
constantly
have that up
expecting.
here. I don't even bother
Yeah,
interacting with the locals anymore for that
yeah.
reason.
So
It's like social trauma.
yeah. So like people say um like, oh yeah, I'll see you Friday, and in my head I'm like, I won't see them Friday. They're gonna disappear and not have an explanation. And
How
I
much of
don't
that is pattern recognition?
I mean it could be. I mean is PTSD sometimes a form of pattern recognition? I'm not sure, but um uh that's what it is to me. And the fact that I ended up living in my car is somewhat derived from the fact that if um, some instances, hadn't blown up, or if I had more situations where people followed through, um, I would have had career opportunities for them instead of career setbacks, and wouldn't have, had to do that. So some of it is like is that as well. I of course then had to look back at that and say, well, how could you have better took into account the fact that other people can and will let you down? Um, which I think ultimately sort of explains how I got to where I am now, where it's a much more self-sufficient, way of living.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but even now, it's just like it doesn't even really matter who it is for the most part, except for like a few people I've known so long that I know this doesn't apply to them. But like, I message folks and I'm expecting entire relationships to fall apart on a whim a lot, right?
Yeah.
For basically nothing, because I've had instances where that basically happened and it just seems unpredictable when it does. Like you could basically what I have found is that you don't really for a relationship to fall apart, you can be a total asshole or you can have the patience of a saint. And that doesn't necessarily matter sometimes. it's gonna fail. It's just gonna fail.
I've had it happen I can't tell you how many connections here in the panelverse that I thought were so solid that have evaporated like this over nothing.
Mhm.
To this, like even you, there's nobody in the panelverse that I will ever feel 100% comfortable with, because some little minor thing can happen that blows up even these as stable as they seem now and as trustworthy as they seem now. I never 100% fully trust it because I've seen relationships even stronger than this blow up like that over nothing. And that's just in the panelverse. So if you extrapolate that to real life, it happens there too. Jobs, coworkers, friendships. I never see it coming. So every time I'm in a relationship with the person, whatever that relationship is, I'm always waiting for that like canoe to flip over or that other shoe to fall.
Huh.
I haven't figured out how to avoid it. No matter how many agreements you make with the person, no matter the level and depth of communication you have, nothing seems to prevent it in the long run. It's always vulnerable to happening some kind of way.
Yeah. Well, I was talking with a friend on the phone earlier tonight, and um she was telling me about like bad experiences she had with roommates. So she only like lives alone now, um and it was like a thing where like you can be a very well behaved roommate, like basically do your half to make sure it's a comfortable living space. Your half of the rent's always on time. You clean up. You don't cause disruptions or anything. You don't get any unwanted attention from the landlord. You're not getting the police called on it or whatever. But then she would just have roommate after roommate where they would just bring all their baggage into that, and they would be disruptive and do it in a situation where like if you confront them and hold them accountable, it makes you look like an asshole for being a stick in the mud, right? And I wonder if there's just like this culture of people who are like that in just about everything, whether it's like roommates or dating, workplace relationships, where they just don't, they seem to get away with everything and turn your world upside down, make you feel like you live in an episode of the Twilight Zone.
I just don't let people like that. They don't. Those people don't stay in my life very long. They get filtered out. Like my first relationship was with a narcissist, so I learned from that one how to get at least filter those types out. And
Was their narcissism part of what made them attractive?
I wasn't attracted. I wasn't really attracted till I broke up. He was way more in love with me than I was with him. We were best friends. I
Oh,
saw it as a friendship, and he saw it as a relationship, but it was a very close
oh,
friendship to me. And after it broke up, that's when like the relationship part kicked in for me when I couldn't have it anymore.
okay.
But he was a narcissistic friend the whole time. And he had this way of making me feel like I was the closest person. I would watch him treat everybody else a certain way, but he wouldn't do it to me. He would make me feel like I was special. I wasn't going to get
Oh,
treated the same way. And then he eventually turned that on me too, because they always do.
gotcha.
Once they have no use for you anymore, they will start treating you the same way they treat everybody else. So, because of the experience I've had with negative people, I've learned, again, pattern recognition. I've learned to identify very early which people to filter out of my life. And one thing I've never had trouble with is drawing boundaries and getting negative influences out of my life when I need to. I don't hang on to negative situations for very long.
Yeah. Um, it, I think the main thing I've gotten good at is figuring out like how not to be an unpleasant surprise in other people's lives.
Tell me about that. How do you do that? How? Because you have to be able to anticipate their
Um,
psychology, I guess.
to some extent, but it's like it's a lot easier not to do evil than it is to do good. Um, and so some of this might be kind of like maybe how I got my more like my cold stone faced demeanor is that some of it is just that became even um more a part of me as I got better at that. And so some people will be disappointed, for example, if I don't have quite the enthusiastic response that they want to see from a person for whatever it is they're sharing, right? But then the enthusiastic response may not you know, trigger um, the reaction in them that they think it will, right? Um, and so it's sort of like you take like a lot of uh, how do you put it? It's like not swinging at the ball and just sort of like hoping that you'll get 4 balls before you get 3 strikes, kind of a thing. You know what I mean?
with the same
Um,
person.
yeah. Well, just with life in general. Um, one thing that Warren Buffett says though is that's interesting is there's no called strikes in investing. So, and so I think that's how it is in real life. You really can't strike out in real life if you don't swing at things. And you can just wait for really high certain opportunities before you do stuff, but you can take a very neutral approach to a lot of things.
But to me, that's just a sign of incompatibility. If they're not happy with my enthusiasm level, then that's probably not a person that's gonna be successful in my life long term anyway. So I just filter them out. I only expect to be able to connect with like 0.14% of the population, and so if I'm in that range, I'm doing good. And so
Right.
most people I meet are going to get filtered out, or they're going to filter themselves out, and I already know that. So I just try to look for the ones that don't have a problem with my enthusiasm, whether it's lack of or I do express the enthusiasm and it's well received, and those are the people that stay. But if they give me any indication that they have a problem with something about me, then clearly there's not a lot of future potential there.
Mm.
And so I don't waste a lot of time investing in that person. I guess that's a form of risk management. Somebody that I'm not meeting their enthusiasm expectations for, that's a high risk relationship, but I'm not going to overinvest in it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. But even if it's not like um, a long-term relationship, like for
Yeah, I'm talking
example,
about like social acquaintances, anybody, coworkers, any kind of connection.
um, but one thing that happens like a situation where multiple people are involved, right, is there there could be one person in that room that will actually prove to be a good relationship with them if you can like get the basic foundation started, right? You have to get acquainted with people first, right?
Yeah.
And other people can torpedo that. They can make a scene to embarrass you or sabotage you, right? That's what the woke basically do, right? Is they cut you off from the people who otherwise might be useful to you in your life by um you know causing disruptions through social pressures, right? Through
What's an
these guilt.
example of that?
Well, it's like if they can come up with a reason to accuse you of being racist, um, right? Or
But
actually, let's go back. Let's
the
go back to
people
what I told you.
that works on, that's also an indication that that's a high risk relationship anyway. Like that's what I would filter out. If they're that easily swayed by what the woke say about me, then they're not the people that I want in my life to begin with. I would filter that person out if they're going to just fall for that, for the woke ploy.
Could be the case. I think sometimes they're also not just the woke ploy, but I think they're relying on the fact that other people might have very limited information about who you are as a person, um, and that they're not going to second guess like, was this what this person really means or what they really believe, right? Um, I think that's a big part of it as well. Is you can accuse, and the power of an accusation, um,
That's
that's
what they
more
try to do with
powerful.
Mike.
That is more powerful than the power of we'll say fact checking or due diligence. Uh,
If you let that be your criteria instead of your own experience.
well, I mean, if you let, yeah, but like for practical purposes, accusations are an extremely powerful tool just to completely start a. It's easier
No,
to start fires than it is to
not
put
to
them out.
me. I don't ever let, like, people tell me stuff about people that come to these panels all the time, and until I see it for myself, I don't let gossip color
I
how I
mean,
see someone.
I'm skeptical of gossip, but again, I'm me. I'm not like most people. Like most people, just because I do something doesn't mean I also don't drink alcohol, right? But clearly other people do. So
There's so many people that are regulars here that people have tried to convince me are up to no good. I can't trust them. They have an agenda, and every single time they come to me and tell me that, I'm like, well, show me. or when I see it, then I'll make that. But them just trying to convince me through accusations is never enough to sway me about a person. I have to have the experience. It has to be in my experience banks for me to take it seriously. It can't just come from somebody saying something.
Yeah, and like a good, I think another good example you may be more familiar with, something less hypothetical, is like the thing that happened with the library where the person was like, I use they them pronouns, right? Um, what's interesting about that approach is it's creating a potential for escalation depending on how I handle it, and it's essentially it's laying down these social tripwires,
Hmm.
right? And it doesn't take much for like not everyone I'm running into that room, is necessarily going to be an annoying wokester who lays those tripwires down. But they can certainly, if they can create a bad enough feeling in the room, they might make it so that other people would be less willing. Let's say I had completely fumbled that situation, right? Because that's not what happened. Um, there's a chance that I wouldn't have just burned bridges with them, but just about everybody else who was there that day. And I'm aware of that, so I am careful not to trip over those
But
things.
if those bridges are that easily burned, those are not your people.
Well, I mean, even if they're not my people long term, it's just like they represent more opportunities, right? They may not be my people, but they could eventually get me in touch with people who are my people.
Oh yeah, you're
Or
right.
it, right, so it's like I could um still like maybe they invite me to a board game night and maybe I only bank on them 2 or 3 times, but maybe by going to a different thing, I run into someone else, right?
Yeah, that
Or the
you
other
have a
thing too is, maybe nobody's my people, and in the meantime, I just want to have fun with whatever impromptu opportunities there are, right? So there's also
yeah.
that.
I
That
see that happen on Survivor all the time. What you talk about? People trying to manipulate perceptions of
Hmm.
other people for their own
Hmm.
games.
that makes a lot of sense too when you talk about the building bridges or having bridges or burning bridges.
Hmm.
Like you said, if there's a bridge and it's already there and those aren't my people, um, I'm not going to set the bridge on fire. Why? Because maybe I just act accordingly and, like I said, wipe my feet when I cross the other side.
Hmm.
Maybe I will still be passable to get through there. So that way, when if I'm on my journey, if I'm looking for my people, I'm looking for my people. If I'm just traveling and seeing how many laps I can take around this world, uh, burning bridges isn't going to help you.
Right.
Building bridges takes work, but being able to use somebody else's bridge every once in a while and not start shit, carry shit, or drop shit off. Uh, hey, when you make your next lap, guess what's already there? Like, hey, guys, it's me again. I'm just going to walk across here and head over there. And they're like, yeah, cool, man.
Yeah.
Joe
And
and I
then.
talk every time he talks about stocks. I relate it to people because I do the same thing with people that he does to stock. I'm constantly evaluating their potential, their risk, and all of that, and I'm constantly adjusting to those evaluations with people. And I know there's just a very narrow band of people that I'm going to invest in long term.
Yeah, and we look at it from risk, like, so the person who said, um, I use they them pronouns, right? What is the risk to her? I mean, nothing, right? In that context, there's
Well,
no
if
way
I
that
was
could
in that
apply.
room, would blow up in her face because her wig would be coming off of her head immediately,
Um, well, she didn't have a wig, but
and she would probably cry. Well, that's a metaphor. That's a
yeah,
gay metaphor. But she would be in tears. I'm pretty sure.
yeah. Well, I mean, maybe in the short term, but in the long term, like if I made her cry, I'm not welcome at that library
Oh,
anymore.
I've already blown up all those bridges, though. Like that's the price I'm willing to pay
Yeah,
to
and
make her
so
cry. But
um,
then I'm a Satanist.
yeah, and then I'm not. So but that's the thing is you know, she still gets to she gets to it might be a battle of attrition, but she ultimately gets to win
But that's
that.
how I think the woke win too, because enough people are not making them cry.
Well, I think some of it's also they cry over too many things. But um, I think the way the woke win is that people who disagree with them have a disagreeable response that often is baited out of them. So I noticed that a lot of people on the right will become, you know, they will come off as angry and combative and oppressive, which is exactly the image that the woke are trying to bait out of them to prove that they're right. And I think what actually has to happen is that people need to refuse to go along with the woke stuff, but with sort of a quiet dignity. Right. So let's don't use people's pronouns, right? And just if people complain, just ignore them, but don't escalate the situation further. That would be my approach.
You could try that, but
Yeah.
I found with the woke, it's going to escalate no matter what, almost all the time. They're not going to let you keep too much of that dignity. That
No,
Trump
they're definitely
handles
going
it
to try.
perfectly. Like when he's in those hostile interviews with the women and stuff, he handles it perfectly. When they try to paint him as something,
Such a nasty woman. I've never
yeah,
had a crush
that
like that.
yes, that kind of stuff.
Uh,
I know. I guess I know the game, and I don't play into it. I know how to not play into it. I don't even let them set the game for the start. I make them play my game. I don't play theirs because I can set a game as easily as the next person can.
I've thought about like I could do like a very dry approach if I'm have to make some kind of response. Again, we'll use the pronoun example since it's an easy one, and they'll be like, and I could say, you use they them pronouns. Like, what does that mean? I identify as they them. Well, what does that mean? It means I identify as gender neutral. What does that mean? Right? I don't know what that means. I don't know how I'm supposed to talk like this if I don't know what it means. Like,
You would be lying.
yeah, and that's what I can say. I'm like, oh, I'm not really sure what that means, so I don't know how to talk like that.
Yeah,
And
that's
that actually
I've done
that is
that.
how it is. There's the
That
reason.
does
That's the
work.
reason I don't talk like that.
Make them look stupid.
Yeah.
I was approached at a Wendy's one time. Uh, Family was there, and we were actually sitting inside of the Wendy's eating our meal. I
Uh-huh.
went to go to the drink machine to get refills, and as I turn around, there's this short woman there who approached me and started talking about me being saved. And
That's
like
bold.
it's nothing I haven't heard before, but this was the first time I turned around from a soda machine and was stopped and told if I can just pray with you. And I told her, like, I'm holding two sodas in my hand. I'm eating dinner with my family at a fast food restaurant, and they have like 8 people sitting around the table. And this woman came to approach me, and I'm like, please just let me go. That's what I said to her. I said, please just let me go. She wasn't touching me, but I was gonna walk right past her. And she said, what did you say? I said, please, I'm going. And then I walked away. So I get back, sit down, I started telling my wife about what was going on. My daughter's going crazy. She's enjoying her meal and playing with her prize cubs and daggone Happy Meal. And this crazy woman comes around the corner where we are the only people in the daggone restaurant and introduces herself to my table, and like she's just like staring at my daughter. And after that whole just random let me pray with you, it's like, hey, I think it's cool that you care about people, but that was borderline criminal. You know what I'm saying?
You told her that?
Mhm.
No.
Oh.
We
How
just
did she
kind of
single
nodded
you
off.
out? Was there something about you that caught her attention?
Well, I tell you what, even after I put the sodas down, I'm almost sure there was nothing that woman was going to be capable of that was going to be a threat, like an actual threat. But at the same time, it's weird as hell, and I wasn't out to hurt anybody's feelings. I wasn't about to act out in front of my daughter or in public or anything like that. So we just kind of like had stern face. My wife, she had already heard the story before this woman came over there, so we like stern faced her. I guess she got her look and she moved on. But hey, even in the name of Jesus Christ, you sit there in the middle of a Wendy's and have a cult meeting. Um, that's cool with me. Just don't try to snatch my soul while I'm getting a refill. You know what
I'm glad you brought up that story because it's actually very interesting. I have over the years been talking to people about like the pronoun thing, and people say, "Oh, I use these pronouns." That is like the culturally left-wing version of when people come up and say, "Oh, will you pray with me?"
Hmm.
And they try to make you look like an asshole. They put these social tripwires in front of you. Um, and that's a great example that you brought up. It's the same trick basically.
because almost anything I would have, in hindsight, of course, anything I could have done, I could have poured my drinks on her. I could have smacked her across. I mean, this is a little old woman, like not old. I would probably say mid 60s, but I'm 6'2". She was probably 5'2", and an elderly woman, and she was being sweet, but her message and
Well, she's not being sweet, disrupting your meal at Wendy's. That's not sweet. Don't give her a pass.
well, okay, Jeff, like we were saying about masking, um,
Sugar coated.
she put on the voice and the smile and the presentation, but it was 100% an interruption of something that I don't think you should interrupt, even if I'm eating out. Like this is a family dinner. I'm getting
Did you have
refills
the
from
beard
the
at the
entire
time?
table. What's that?
Did you have the beard at the time?
Uh, maybe not like this, but enough, yeah.
Okay.
And me and my wife, we were both getting off of work, so like I'm covered in my labels, and she wears professional dress, and we ordered our food. We were enjoy. This wasn't just some thing. Like when you, I think nowadays, like when you go and you actually sit inside of a fast food restaurant, like you are. Forget the food and the quality of it or whatever. You're trying to enjoy that space that they provide for you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And we
I know
had a big
exactly what.
window and it was all good. And then this crazy woman just
Yeah,
tried
she
to
might
like,
have been crazy. That's bold. To like you of all people to approach in public like that and harass.
yeah, I mean, I might look homeless, but we were having a family dinner. Like,
You know what's
I don't,
funny and
I don't,
trackable is, um, a friend of mine like finally got to see like my beard because this is the first time I've had a beard, and she was like, "Definitely keep the beard, but like, and grow it a bit more, but not like." And she did like this, like Appalachians. So I guess I'm like, I was thinking, so she probably doesn't want me to look like untrackable because you're the most
Oh,
recent
you thought
example of
that?
that came. He's the most recent example.
Did
People in
she see
Chapel
you with
Hill
the
don't have
army
beards
hat
like
though?
that. No, I don't think she did.
She didn't get the full experience. You need to have them take into account the army hat to get the full
Yeah,
feedback. I don't know why you don't work that hat more.
because it's just kind of weird to be wearing pieces of my old uniform that stand out like that. Okay, yeah, I am kind of wearing one right now, but like this doesn't stand out as much as the hat.
It was a look. It really
hey,
was.
I kind of do the same thing. I have like it was called a bear suit. So it's like the kind of overalls that go into the lowers and they
Oh yeah.
got full zip sides and then the big bear suit jacket. Um, I still have that stuff. It's not labeled type stuff. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
I don't feel weird wearing it.
Yeah.
But
Well, like the patrol cap is a something that's more like it's like flamboyantly army, you know.
yeah. But
But
that
Jeff likes
was
it.
something that I've been thinking about is like I definitely don't want to put anything on my car,
Hmm.
but I've been thinking about getting a quartermaster veteran cap.
Okay.
Oh,
Maybe to wear occasionally. I don't want to wear something like that all the time because I agree with what you're saying about like putting yourself out there on every occasion, like bumper stickers, license plates, uh, that the hat you're wearing, you know.
Especially when I didn't fight any wars. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, yeah, and me either. But that's it's still such a huge part of my life that you know, my mother, she's a Vietnam vet. She's got a hat. My father was a Vietnam era vet, right? But he's got his hat. He doesn't wear that shit all the time. He doesn't shove that people's up his ass. You meet my dad for one sentence, you're gonna know. He doesn't have to wear the hat. But just to have one, I think I want to get one. One of those this says veteran, but I want to get the quartermaster crest
you just
on there.
do it. I think people should express themselves however they want. I mean, I had antlers for crying out loud. Get the quartermaster hat.
Yeah, I think
R.I.P.
I should.
Antlers.
I never let people stop me from expressing what I want to express.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why my Jeff impression would be very comical if I were to do it, because there's a lot to work with because you don't filter. It's great. Um, so yeah, what if the
I need to get successful enough to have a Saturday Night Live appearance.
maybe like we could do like an annual like I don't know if you remember this, but like at military balls you would do the skits to make fun of the commanders and the NCOs.
Why don't we do a panel roast for Halloween?
That'd be
It'd
fun.
be controlled drama.
I remember I did this impression of one of um it was the colonel who was in charge of recruiting at the ROTC battalion. Like, and I like the house just erupted in laughter. I was so spot on.
I used to
Yeah,
imitate our teachers and make the class laugh.
Yeah.
I had
I
nicknames for
always
all of them too.
heard that a lot of that stuff went on. We only did it for like probably 5 minutes during basic training.
Ah,
Uh,
okay.
way more towards the end. But no, none of my unit. Like I only even went to one real. It wasn't even a ball. It was like a celebration.
Ah,
Uh,
yeah.
like it just a big unit thing. Mandatory go. Free drinks and take care of yourself after. But it's like you have to show up. And no, there was like a 5 minute presentation type of thing, and then eat food, get out.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, we'll have to think about that, Jeff. Well, in any event, it's almost 1 a.m. here, and I've been sleepy for a while, so
Oh wow, yeah, get some rest. I might
I'm gonna head out here,
do the same.
Yeah,
and
let's. I'll go ahead and join you there. So
Okay. Well, thanks for hanging
uh,
out, guys. This is a
yep,
great conversation as usual.
yep. See you guys.
Okay. See you tomorrow.
hey, enjoy the rest of y'all's weekend.
You too,
You too.
Attractable, and have a good day. Okay, that was fun. Um, I'll be here tomorrow talking about something else. In the meantime, have a good rest of your night, and I will see you then. Keep raising hell. Get my brand. Oops. There we go. Okay, take care, everybody.